Chapter 148. The dragon boat whizzed past in front of their eyes, and a group of children of all sizes chased after the dragon boat along the riverbank. They looked at the people who were waiting on the side, and their hearts trembled in fear. If they were to fall and let others step on them. Dragon boats one after another passed by the river in front of the imperial tent. When they were adding to the fun, they all said that sixth brother was the best at playing. Now it looks like it wasn't fake at all. It looks like sixth brother will definitely win today. Li Hongyuan still had a lazy appearance, completely ignoring the Gong Prince's words. Towards this fourth brother whose presence wasn't as strong as the other two, but who would jump around from time to time, Li Hongyuan was too lazy to pay attention to him. In the previous life he was dealt with by Li Hongming, who added fuel to the fire, and was directly imprisoned, not even half a year before he went to the Yellow Springs. So, he didn't need to do anything special as long as people kept an eye on him, didn't let him out of his control, and then gave him a little push at the right time. The Gong Prince clenched his fists, blue veins popping out on the back of his hands. Obviously, someone's disregard made him very dissatisfied. As the fifth prince, the sickly Gong Prince was in a rare good state of mind today, but now that he was sandwiched between the fourth brother and sixth brother, his heart was clenched in pain. He glanced at his fourth brother. Sixth brother was rarely obedient. Why did they have to find trouble to provoke him? In the end, the one who suffered losses wasn't him. It was his life that was too comfortable. He had to look for trouble. It must be said that the Gong Prince was also miserable in the court. He belonged to the weakest side. His voice couldn't compare to the other two, plus there was the powerful Yu family, suppressed by all sides. Sometimes he felt that he was living a useless life. His heart was inevitably somewhat twisted. He couldn't tolerate others ignoring him. It would make him feel like he was being looked down upon. With so many ministers present, he felt even more embarrassed. The evil fire in his heart was strong. For a moment he was a little dizzy. Sixth brother, fourth brother is talking to you. Is this the attitude you should have towards your older brother? That voice couldn't help but raise a few notches. Everyone's eyes couldn't help but turn to him. What this filth also affected the Gong Prince today. His courage was this fat. The Gong Prince received the baptism of everyone's gazes, and unconsciously puffed out his chest. He actually enjoyed this kind of attention, but he didn't know how many people were calling him an idiot in their hearts. Especially the left commander-in-chief, Qin Tianming, who knew Li Hongyuan's real background. He clicked his tongue in his heart. Li Hongyuan's head was so big, but he wanted to be the biggest in the world. Not to mention whether he could snatch it or not, even if he gave it to Li Hongyuan. He was not afraid of being crushed to death by the hat. Sixth brother. Noisy. Li Hongyuan finally gave him a look, but it was cold without any warmth. What does it have to do with you whether I know how to play or not? Whether I win or lose, does it have anything to do with you? You, on the other hand, are betting a lot. You're just trying to look impressive. Think about how many times you can lose with that little bit of money you have. The Gong Prince abruptly stood up, his eyes looking like he wanted to swallow Li Hongyuan whole. Li Hongyuan sneered. Strong on the outside but weak on the inside. Li Hongyuan. She was about to pounce on him and teach him a lesson. Enough. Old fourth, sit down for Zhen, you disgraceful thing. The Gong Prince's head was dizzy, but he didn't lose his reason. For a while he froze in place, and only after a while did he stiffly sit back down. Everyone else had the same thought. Luqing Emperor was biased towards Jin Qinhuang, so biased that there was no end to it. Knowing this, every one of them still brought shame to themselves. However, there were also people who wondered if Jin Qinhuang had some kind of demonic nature. No matter how rational a person was, they couldn't resist him. In the end, it was because he was too infuriating. In the end, it was because of jealousy. He didn't have any ability, but he had too much. Some people thought that among all the princes, Jin Qinhuang's private property was probably more than the sum of the other princes. So, if he didn't have the slightest idea, then he must have seen through the world of mortals, and stepped out of the three realms. Prince Jin's dragon boat, from the very beginning, maintained the advantage, and the further it went, the larger it became. Moreover, it maintained this advantage until the very end. In the last 100 zhong, even if his dragon boat did its best to chase, it could only shorten the distance a little. However, those who were purely watching the fun never cared about who won or lost. They watched the process, felt the atmosphere, and enjoyed the festivity. In addition to the private bet, Li Hongyuan unceremoniously accepted all the other prizes. In addition to the people who bet on him, their things were returned to their original owners, and he also received 3 additional things of almost the same value. In fact, the general situation was the same, but who let him win? There were too many things and he was happy. In other words, he had money, and he was willful, no one lost. Send the rest to the Luo family. It should be known that, after the prizes were divided, more than half of what was left was still not a small amount. He didn't even bat an eyelid and said to give it away. Sure enough, in front of such a master, you really didn't have any temper. However, didn't this mean that Jin Qinhuang really cared about this fiancé? 6th brother, can you give me the things that your 3rd sister-in-law bet? Li Hongming said with a smile. After all, Li Hongyuan was a gem in front of him. If he did something like using his own things to exchange, it would inevitably seem deliberate. So he directly asked for it. First, it showed his attitude towards his Wangfei, and second, it showed that his and Li Hongyuan's brotherly affection was something that others couldn't compare to. Don't look for Ben Wang. The things had already been given away. Li Hongming smiled, understanding his meaning. His attitude towards the Gong Prince was superior, so even if Jin Qinhuang's temper wasn't good, in fact, it wasn't entirely his fault. If your attitude towards him was better, he would also be more amiable towards you. So the Gong Prince could only chuckle. The things were picked up and sent away one by one. The things sent to the Luo family were naturally the most eye-catching. After knowing the reason, it caused a lot of commotion. Then, many people turned their eyes to the quiet Ruan family. They thought that even if she wasn't the Zhengfei, she could still dominate the Wangfu. Now, it seemed that it wasn't the case. Before, Jin Qinhuang didn't do anything, so they didn't think much of it. But now that he did, the difference was too obvious. In fact, most of the time it wasn't the quantity or quality of the things but the attitude. Even if Jingwan took the majority and Ruan Fengfei took a small part, no one would say anything. One side, it was reasonable to be unequal. Thus, Ruan Fengfei, who had always been very popular, attracted gossip at this time. It couldn't be helped, not everyone liked gold and silver. She, Ruan Fengfei, was naturally no exception. It didn't matter if there was no problem, but once there was a problem, she would definitely be hit while she was down. Some people even suspected that Ruan Fengfei didn't enter Jin Qinhuang Fu because she wasn't liked by Jin Qinhuang. After all, the time for her marriage was not long after Sun Yijia. Sun Yijia had already married someone else on the set wedding date. It was reasonable to say that she should enter the family soon after that. But now, Jin Qinhuang had a fiancé, and there was no movement on her side. Was it her turn after the Zhengfei? The Luo family's 3rd young lady hadn't reached marriageable age yet. Wait until next year, Ruan Fengfei would be 17. Moreover, the premise was that the Luo family's 3rd young lady wouldn't be jinxed. So what if her name shook the capital? So what if her talent suppressed the crowd? She was still an old lady who couldn't get married. At this time, Ruan Fengfei had already woken up. If it was someone else, they would probably hide this matter from her. However, her mother took the initiative to tell her before she heard any news. Ruan Fengfei looked at her gorgeous mother. She was almost 40 years old, but she didn't look like she was 31 years old. In the eyes of the world, she was a standard virtuous wife and mother. She treated the children left behind by the first wife as her own. Although Ruan Ruizhong's eldest son was several years older than her, now that he had grandchildren, she had long become a cheap great-grandmother. Her children and grandchildren respected her. Ruan Ruizhong valued her. There was nothing in the Ruan family's backyard that was beyond her control. Serving a man who was still dissatisfied with being her own father, was there really no complaints or regrets? Ruan Fengfei lowered her eyelids. It's just some worldly possessions. Mother, would I still care about those things? It's good that my son understands. The woman gently touched Ruan Fengfei's head. However, Ruan Fengfei didn't know that today was the beginning of all her pain. She only realized that Jin Qinhuang cared about others far more than her. This blow was just a drop in the ocean. When Jingwan received the gift, she didn't know what to say. Did Jin Qinhuang want to roast her or what? However, since it had already been sent, it was naturally impossible to return it. First, she took out the prize that she had bet. There's a mistake. This isn't mine. It was a very rare blood jade. The color was uniform and the head was full of water. Moreover, the head of the water looked very smooth and beautiful. Her bracelet, in terms of value, 10 of them couldn't compare to it. In terms of rarity, there was no need to mention it. That servant girl pursed her lips and smiled. Third young lady, it's this. Wang Ye used this jade to exchange for your bracelet. Jingwan was speechless again. She said that he didn't act according to common sense, but he really could do surprising things from time to time. He did it so openly and honorably. If she refused, she would be petty and at a disadvantage. Thus she put it away. Her attitude made the person who sent the gift unable to stop praising her. Soon after, Prince Rui's personal attendant respectfully explained his purpose for coming. Jingwan naturally didn't refuse. Which one is it? You can take it back. Because there were only a few things in the brocade handkerchief, it was very conspicuous. As for the other few things, I'll have to trouble Gong Gong to bring them back to the other Wang Fei. Third young lady is too polite. It's not troublesome. Jingwan directly used these things as a reward, letting each of them pick one thing. Among these objects there were very precious ones, and naturally there were also ordinary ones. The identity of the person who used them determined their level. Those who looked illustrious but didn't live up to their name. On this important occasion, they had no choice but to dress up and go out. Losing one of these things was enough for them to feel heartache, but there was no other way. These people were also sensible. Each of them picked one of the more average value, expressed their thanks, and then left in turn. Looking at the remaining things, to tell the truth, unless it was someone close to her, Jingwan didn't have any interest in using the things that had been used by outsiders, no matter how precious or beautiful they were. To put it bluntly, it was disgusting. Jingwan looked at her brothers and sisters who had basically all returned and smiled. I'm presenting Buddha with borrowed flowers today. See if there's anything you like, pick a few. Pausing. Mama, take a look first, see if there's anything that's against the rules and can't be used. If there is, pick it up first. Granny Gong nodded and checked the contents of each tray. Young lady, there's nothing here. Generally speaking, this kind of situation wouldn't happen, but there was nothing wrong with being cautious. If because of her, she implicated her family, that was not what Jingwan was willing to see. What are you still doing? Hurry up and choose. Or is it that none of these things are to your liking? Third sister, after all, these are given to you by Jin Qinhuang Wei. Before Luo Jingde finished his words, Luo Jingbo patted him lightly. Since it's a gift to younger sister, it's natural for younger sister to handle it. Even if it's a gift from the emperor, except for some special things, there's nothing that can't be given away. Many of these things, younger sister can't use them. Just treat it as helping her. I won't be polite. As he said this, he reached out and took a fan pendant from the nearest tray. With him taking the lead, the others were no longer restrained and began to happily pick what they liked. Third sister, these things seem to be given to the Luo family, not to you. These things should be returned to the palace. As soon as these words came out, everyone stagnated and looked at Luo Jingying. Speaking of annoying people, sometimes they were really annoying. Who didn't know that it was just an excuse and not a formal New Year's gift? Moreover, it was in the palace. How shameless would she be to say such words? No one asked you to stretch out your hand. Old Madame Luo said coldly. Pick what you want. Why do you care about her? Luo Jingying was originally not very likable. After knowing that she was going to enter the Rue family as a concubine, Perhaps they thought of something themselves, or perhaps someone else said something to them. In short, when she went out today, no one paid attention to her. In fact, no one knew what would happen to her in the future. After all, it was the Rue family. As the person most likely to become the new emperor, it was far better to be on good terms with her than to be on bad terms with her. But in fact, no one in the Luo family did so. To a certain extent, this showed the attitude of the two elders towards her. At the same time, it was also the influence of the Luo family. They happily continued to pick things. Between the young girls, they also compared things to each other. However, the things that were suitable for them were few in number and the value was not high. After all, they came from the young girl who angered him. Luo Jingying bit her lip and shrank to one side. Finally, she thought about it and walked to old Madame Luo. "Grandmother, granddaughter is not feeling well. I want to go back first." "No one has time to send you back." "No need to send me back. I can go back by myself." "You can't even stay at home for half a day. If you go outside, I'm afraid you won't be able to find your way home. Stay here obediently." How could Luo Jingying not understand the meaning of old Madame Luo's words? Her face turned green and white, and she cursed in her heart. When the other adults heard old Madame Luo's words, they thought in their hearts, as expected, this kind of thing should not lead her child astray. It's right to stay away from her. Digression. This is a desperately trying to catch up with a manuscript, https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653095. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com mobile version reading website. Bicken. Chapter 149. Luo Jingying was furious after being reprimanded by old Madame Luo. After all, she was a girl and naturally wanted to save face. Being reprimanded in front of so many people, not only the masters of the Luo family, but also the servants who served her. She was so ashamed that she wanted to die. These people had always believed in flattering the strong and trampling on the weak. As the old madam of the inner residence, even if she was not in charge of the household, her attitude could almost determine a person's honor, disgrace, or even life and death. Luo Jingying was worried about her own feelings and even wished that the news was good. Because of this, she did not notice that she had actually been excluded from the Luo family. Other than the fact that she was still a member of the Luo family, the treatment she received in the Luo family was no different from that of someone who had been expelled from the family. And after she entered Prince Rue's residence, this point gradually became more and more apparent. In the beginning, she relied on Prince Rue's favor and was arrogant and condescending. When the people in Prince Rue's residence realized that she was actually no different from an orphan, Prince Rue would immediately withdraw his favor. He might even attribute all the fault to Luo Jingying's deceit because everything he did to the Luo family did not achieve his goal. As long as he was cold, he did not say or do anything, and Luo Jingying would fall into hell. With her EQ and IQ, she would definitely be played to death. However, Li Hongming probably would not let her die. After all, she was a daughter of the Luo family. If she died, Luo Peishan would not ignore it for the sake of the Luo family's reputation. Even if he did not want to become enemies with Li Hongming, he was afraid that he would become enemies with him. This was naturally something that Li Hongming did not want to see. The Luo family did not care about this fourth young lady at all, as long as outsiders did not know. Therefore, her surname was Luo. As long as she carried this name, she had to be prepared to be completely exploited. If she lost her value, she would not be far from death. Luo Rongping had already realized that it wasn't safe to use his daughter's marriage. Although he didn't want to admit it, the reason why Prince Rue valued him so much wasn't because of his talent, but because his father was Luo Peishan. A person who was completely liked by the target was a good-for-nothing. Luo Rongping had to find a way to create an illusion that Luo Jingying was not Luo Peishan's favorite granddaughter, but she was not bad. Otherwise, he was worried that he would also become a good-for-nothing. Luo Rongping was lost in thought. Mrs. Lu lowered her head and pulled her handkerchief from time to time. She was somewhat out of tune with the lively atmosphere. Luo Peishan remembered everyone's reaction from the beginning to the end, but did not speak. In any case, Luo Rongping was also his son. He had also spent a lot of energy on him, but Luo Rongping repeatedly refused to listen to his advice. He agreed on the surface but disobeyed in secret. Because he did not help him advance in his career. He harbored hatred in his heart. Now he even betrayed the family. Sometimes, Luo Peishan even wanted to simply remove him from the Luo family and end all troubles. However, in the end he still had reason. This kind of thing could not be done casually. Moreover, Luo Rongping's actions could not even be shown on the surface. However, there was one thing that must be done, and that was, he could not be allowed to continue jumping around. But what should be done specifically? Jingwan asked people to pick out the good things from the remaining things. Even if she did not use them herself, she could use them as gifts to others, or use them to reward people in the future. As for the remaining things, it was simple and crude to deal with them. Gold and silver were all melted down, and other things like gems were all dismantled and reused to make other things. Jingwan's method, under normal circumstances, was the usual method of dealing with old things. However, these things were sent by Jin Qinhuang. Wasn't it not very good to do so? Jingwan just smiled and did not say a word. Although they did not gather together for the lunch banquet, the things were prepared by each family. However, at this time every year, Lu Qingdi would give out rewards. In addition to the necessary things for the Dragon Boat Festival such as dumplings, he would also give out some dishes as rewards. Every time this kind of special day, it was to reflect who among the courtiers were in the emperor's heart. Of course, Lu Chengdi, due to various considerations, would not completely follow his own likes and dislikes. However, from some small details, everyone would often be able to deduce the truth. It was a big crime to speculate about the emperor's intentions, but as a courtier, if you completely did not think about the emperor's thoughts, you would probably be out of the game if you were not careful. The Luo family was given 6 dishes, and all of them were dishes with good meanings. There were more than 100 dumplings, with all kinds of flavors. It was just that the number of dumplings was a bit too much. It should be known that the emperor gave out food, and everything must be finished. It could not be given to the servants, as that would be seen as looking down on the emperor's prestige. Luo Peishan waved his hand and kept a part of it, and the rest were all given out. Every in-law's family had a share, including the Chen family. In this way, each family did not have much. That was something bestowed by the emperor. How many people wanted it but could not get it? Therefore, when they knew the origin of these dumplings, there was not a single person who was not happy. Each dumpling was divided and divided. What could reach each person's mouth was not a big piece, but it made the people who ate it feel that it was the best delicacy in the world, and they enjoyed eating it very much. Even though it was already May, the rewarded dishes could not escape the cold fate. Moreover, there was no such thing as eating cold food on a hot day. Jingwan paid special attention to food, so she was not very interested in these dishes. Father, there were only 2 dishes last year, but there are twice as many this year. Is this? Luo Peishan waved his hand. After being promoted to the Minister of Personnel, it is natural to add 1 more dish. The other 3 dishes are for the 3rd daughter. Don't think that your father is so important to the emperor that ordinary people can't compare with him. Well, they all understood. However, these dishes were not designated to anyone. Luo Peishan waved his hand again, and the dishes were divided. More than 2 hours after lunch, Lu Chengdi took the concubines and the princes and princesses back to the palace. As for the murderer of the murder case, there was still no clue, which made Lu Chengdi a little annoyed. It also proved that this was not an ordinary murder case. However, no one could say for sure what the reason was. In addition, his son and his officials had a private bet with each other. The new hatred and the old hatred added together, which naturally made him angry. One of his good sons, because he lost, let people beat the participants of the competition half to death, and then directly dragged them away without asking any more questions. If something went wrong, these people might lose their lives. Lu Qingdi couldn't wait to tie him up and beat him fiercely. This idiot, didn't he know how to deal with it privately? Yes, in Lu Qingdi's view, his fault was not that he beat people, but that he beat people at the wrong time and place, which was easy to be criticized. Just wait and see, he would definitely be impeached by the imperial censor tomorrow. Everyone knew that Lu Qingdi was in a bad mood now, so naturally, no one went to find trouble with him. Others didn't find trouble with him, but God continued to make trouble for Lu Qingdi. Before Lu Qingdi stepped into the palace gate, he heard the report again. Lord Ruan's beloved daughter was on the way back to the mansion. The horse was frightened and the carriage overturned. Miss Ruan was thrown out of the carriage and almost died under the horse's hooves. Lu Qingdi was shocked and angry. Have you checked whether it was an accident or man-made? Replying to your majesty, this lowly one has not investigated. However, after asking the Ruan family, they were very certain that it was an accident. The horse that pulled the carriage was ill, and the coachman who raised the horse did not discover it in time. The horse suddenly became ill and went crazy today, causing the accident. The commander of the Imperial Guards answered dutifully. Lu Qingdi frowned, but he looked relieved. No one saw it, or they might imagine that there was a love and hate drama between Lu Qingdi and Ruan Fengfei, and Lu Qingdi made his son a cuckold. How is Ruan Fengfei? Your Majesty, after Miss Ruan was thrown out of the carriage, she has been in a coma, and her face may have been hurt. Under normal circumstances, this matter would not be reported to Lu Qingdi immediately, but because Ruan Fengfei's maid had been tortured and killed before, it was not that no one suspected that the other party's target might be Ruan Fengfei. Now that this happened, it was inevitable that there would be doubts. In fact, when this matter was reported to Lu Qingdi, it was to ask whether this matter needed to be investigated thoroughly with the previous murder case. Don't worry about it. Since the Ruan family said it was an accident, he would not do anything unnecessary. Lu Qingdi ordered the chamberlain to tell the empress to send someone to check. In fact, it was more subtle to see if Ruan Fengfei's face was really hurt. And how serious was the injury? After returning to the palace, the empress left first with the excuse that she was busy with palace affairs. Imperial concubine Su stood beside Lu Qingdi. Looking at Lu Qingdi's frown, she reached out and gently stroked it, very worried. Lu Qingdi held her hand, and there was an atmosphere between the two that outsiders could not get in. This made those favored concubines who wanted to get close to Lu Qingdi feel jealous and embarrassed at the same time. Thinking of Imperial concubine Su's means, they could only give up resentfully. When the Imperial concubine and Lu Qingdi were together, the palace servants consciously retreated a little. Lu Qingdi held Imperial concubine Su's hand and slowed down as if taking a stroll. As they walked, he suddenly sighed. What did I say? Ruan Fengfei, this girl might also have an accident. Look, it's true. Imperial concubine Su remembered the conversation she had with Lu Qingdi. She had an accident, and it was not Yuan'er who did anything to her. How can Yuan'er be blamed? This is too unfair. If I were to say, it's all their bad luck. Lu Qingdi firmly believed that his evil son had jinxed his wife, but Imperial concubine Su had always been unwilling to admit it. Imperial concubine Su, who had always been gentle in front of him, often talked back to him when she talked about that evil son's marriage. Lu Qingdi laughed. This is not the first time this has happened. Even now you still refuse to admit it. It's nonsense. Why do I have to admit it? I have a hunch that this time, the Luo family's third miss will be able to marry Yuan'er smoothly. At that time, I will naturally shut those who say that Yuan'er jinxes his wife. Those people included him, the emperor. Although your majesty has decreed the marriage, the 3 letters and 6 rites have not been completed yet. "Your Majesty, this concubine will not accompany you any longer. This concubine has to go and instruct the people in the Ministry of Internal Affairs to quickly settle the marriage." She did not wait for Lu Chengdi's response and hurriedly left after bowing. Lu Chengdi stood in the same place, confused. In the end, he could only sigh helplessly. When everyone returned to the Ruan family, whether it was the masters or the servants, they were all silent. There were not many people left in Ruan Fengfei's room. Other than Ruan Ruizhong and his wife, there were only a few people who served Ruan Fengfei. Among them, 2 servant girls were still kneeling upright. The imperial physician had already left. Ruan Ruizhong looked at his wife sitting by the bed and silently holding his daughter's hand. His heart ached. He walked forward and patted her shoulder. "Madam, don't worry. Didn't the imperial physician say that our daughter's injuries aren't very serious and will recover soon? The injury on her face isn't a big deal. Although it can't be completely healed, it won't be very obvious." Old Madame Ruan, who was as beautiful as a young woman, raised her head to look at Ruan Ruizhong. She forced a smile. "Master, I am fine. You're busy. Later, Your Majesty will hold a banquet in the palace. You should go." What his wife said was true. Ruan Ruizhong could only leave for the time being. "After returning from the palace, I will come to see Fengfei." When Ruan Ruizhong left, the expression on old Madame Ruan's face changed completely. "You two go and receive your punishment." Her voice was bone-chilling. The 2 servant girls couldn't help but tremble. However, they didn't dare to say a single word. After they left, another man who looked slightly thin and weak with no sense of presence came in and stood respectfully beside Madame Ruan. "Master, are we really going to let this matter go?" "Not over, what else can we do?" Old Madame Ruan gritted her teeth and said. Ever since she married Ruan Ruizhong, she had never been so aggrieved. The other party dared to act so brazenly. They must have some understanding of us. The fact that they were able to hinder all of you who were escorting Fengfei is the best proof. The enemy is in the dark while we are in the light. You should know that once the matter of the Ruan family's backyard is exposed, what will happen to us? Although we can't do anything on the surface, we must investigate clearly in the dark. What is the origin of the other party? She thought that everything was under control. However, she didn't expect that there was such a terrifying enemy hiding in the dark. If everything was under the other party's nose, she shuddered at the thought. "Master, rest assured. This little one will investigate clearly as soon as possible. You can go. This little one will retire." Old Madame Ruan sat quietly for a moment. "Fengfei, don't worry. Mother will avenge you." Ruan Ruizhong believed that Ruan Fengfei was an accident so easily. Not to mention that he didn't think that anyone would deliberately harm his daughter because there was really no reason. Furthermore, his second wife took care of everything in the Ruan family so well that he didn't need to spend any effort. His trust in his second wife was a little blind, which led to him not knowing anything about the matters in the backyard. It must be said that such a shrewd and wise man like him had fallen into such a trap. Unfortunately, he didn't know about it himself. Who knew what kind of reaction he would have when he found out in the future? Who knew if he would be pitiful or sad? Perhaps it was because he had never suffered a loss from a woman that he would be like this. And in Jin Qin Wang Fu, Li Hongyuan sat in the shadows of his bedroom, making his whole person somewhat blurry and unreal. "Master, the ointment has already been applied on Ruan Fengfei's face. It will take effect in a month. At that time, a black scar will grow on her face like a centipede." And Zhou stood beside an and said respectfully. Li Hongyuan faintly made a sound of an. "Master, this subordinate has something that I don't understand. Today's matter will inevitably alert the enemy. What Ben Wang wants is precisely to alert the enemy. A venomous snake that hid too well. Once it was startled, it wouldn't let it swim out. Instead, it would shrink even tighter and become more cautious. Because it knew who the enemy was in a place it didn't know and how strong they were. Today's matter made it understand that they were definitely not weak. Also, it wasn't easy to deal with Ruan Fengfei using conventional methods, so it was better to use unconventional methods. Digression. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653096. HTML chapter error. Click here to report, no registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com mobile version reading website, m. Bicken. Chapter 150. Madame Ruan probably wouldn't have thought that the enemy hiding in the dark, under her careful arrangement, not only hurt her daughter, but also let her witness the other party's people take out the eye ointment with something added. Then, she personally applied the ointment on her daughter's face. If she knew all of this, who knew how she would react? After returning to the Luo family, Jingwan felt a lot more relaxed. She didn't have to continue pretending to be sick. For a healthy baby, it was a great challenge for her to pretend to be sick. And her most painful experience was probably the time when she was in the capital. She had carriage sickness. There was nothing more painful than this. After Jingwan regained her energy, she started to think about how to take revenge. To be honest, she was really lacking in this skill. However, as the saying goes, a rabbit will bite when forced. Jingwan thought that she couldn't be worse than a rabbit, right? However, the implementation of this matter was indeed not that simple. First of all, Ruan Fengfei's method was too secretive. Her image to the outside world was too good. Even if they pointed her out, they would not get the desired result. More importantly, there was no evidence. This was also the reason why she and the two elders of the Luo family kept it a secret even though they knew who the instigator was. However, in this way, if she took action against Ruan Fengfei, then she would become the evil person who would be blamed by others. And if she wanted to do it perfectly and not be discovered by others, it required the right time, the right place, and the right people. For such an opportunity, when you didn't have the ability to create it, you had to wait patiently and prepare in advance. Jingwan inexplicably looked up at the sky with some sadness. It was very tiring to plot against the people under the same roof. And to plot against the people in another family's backyard was a huge project. She wanted to ask Ruan Fengfei in order to plot against her. How much effort did she spend? Was it tiring? Was it worth it? Jingwan thought again. Since she had already determined that Ruan Fengfei was the kind of person with a twisted personality, then as long as she could achieve her goal, she would probably feel that it was worth it no matter how many things she did. What's more, it was just to plot against Jingwan. If she succeeded, the whole Luo family would be implicated. The additional achievement value was simply too great. So how could it not be worth it? However, if the plan didn't succeed, it would only make her crazier. Looking at Jingwan's expression, Nanny Gong basically knew what Jingwan was thinking. Miss Ruan Fengfei's carriage fell over on the way back. She was injured and fainted. Her face was injured. Even God is helping you take revenge, so you don't have to think about the other side anymore. Jingwan was stunned. Then she said calmly, "He's not dead." This time, it was Nanny Gong's turn to be surprised. Even if Luo Jingying was like that, Miss didn't want her to die. She didn't even have much hatred for her. Although Miss said that it took feelings to hate someone, she just ignored them. Ruan Fengfei was definitely the first person who could make Jingwan want her to die. It could be seen that Ruan Fengfei really stepped on Mrs. Reverse Scale this time. Yes, Miss had always cared about her family, more than herself. Of course, in Mrs. eyes, her family probably didn't include everyone in the Luo family, but only a few. Her heart was soft and indifferent. She could care about the whole world, but she could also care about a few people. Feelings were mutual. She had done this to the extreme. However, once someone received her sincere treatment, they would probably feel that they were the happiest person in the world. Miss wanted Ruan Fengfei to die. In fact, it was not difficult for the prince to make up his mind to kill someone. What needed to be looked at was the price to pay and the consequences. Miss, if it doesn't affect you at all, do you want her to die directly or suffer a lot before she dies? Jingwon looked at Nanny Gong. Although Nanny Gong still looked serious, Jingwon felt that her question was very strange. Under normal circumstances, she wouldn't ask this question. However, Jingwon's answer to this question was still very clear. It's too easy for a person with such a vicious mind to die so casually. Based on her meticulous and skillful way of doing things, and the fact that she was able to target others as if they were her prey despite having no enmity with them, I'm definitely not the first person to do so. For those who have been hurt by her, it's too much to just let her die to atone for her sins. Nanny Gong nodded and understood. Judging from the prince's plan, he wouldn't easily take Ruan Fengfei's life. It was good that Mrs. Idea didn't conflict with his plan. Jingwon always felt that it was impossible to have a twisted mind. Well, she couldn't be 100% sure about this. However, even if there were congenital perverts, there should be very few of them. Ruan Ruizhong was in the center of the country's centralized power. The possibility of him not giving himself away at all was infinitely close to zero. Then, the person who caused Ruan Fengfei's character was more likely to be her mother. Nanny, do you know the wife of the Prime Minister? Madame Ruan. When Jingwon heard Nanny Gong call her that, she was immediately embarrassed. It wasn't that she hadn't seen her before. She looked really young, but she turned out to be a madam. Well, it was because Ruan Ruizhong's seniority was high. If she married him, she would probably be a madam from the beginning. Although she didn't have to play the leveling game of young madam, and madam, for a young woman, probably no one was willing to go all the way. Facing the daughters-in-law who were much older than her and hearing them call her madam, Jingwon actually wanted to ask how big the shadow in the heart of Madame Ruan was in the heart. However, no matter what she thought, she couldn't reveal a single word. Jingwon lit a row of candles for her in her heart. Everyone said that she was the most virtuous person in the whole capital. Nanny Gong briefly told Jingwon what everyone knew. Of course, she was now very sure that she was just like her daughter. It was fake. Nanny Gong didn't know the real situation of Ruan Fengfei, so naturally, she didn't know the real situation of her mother. After hearing Nanny Gong's words, Jingwon's first reaction was that she was just like Ruan Fengfei. She was too perfect to be real. This kind of person was most likely problematic. Therefore, Jingwon ruled out the slight possibility that Ruan Fengfei was a congenital abnormality. However, in the short term, Ruan Fengfei probably didn't have time to come out and cause trouble, which also meant that she couldn't take revenge. If she couldn't see this person, there was naturally no need to talk about anything else. Therefore, if the enemy didn't show up, it was useless to think about revenge. Jingwon wouldn't let her enemy affect her life, but Ruan Fengfei would never be so important to her. Later, Madame Luo sent more mugwort and other things to Jingwon's yard. She also ordered her to always carry the Buddha beads given by Master Liaochen with her in the future. Even if it didn't match her clothes, she had to use another way to carry it. Jingwon knew Madame Luo's intention, so she didn't object on this matter. In fact, Jingwon liked the Buddha beads very much. 2 days passed in a hurry. Luo Jingying was about to go out. The Luo family didn't decorate with lanterns or decorations, and there were no guests. It was quiet just like any other day. There was a small sedan chair with green cloth parked at the side door of the Luo family. Perhaps to show that they attached great importance to Luo Jingying, those who came to the Luo family to pick her up were a dignified nanny, a steward, and 4 maids by Li Hongming's side. It was reasonable to say that the nanny should bring people to pick her up, but the Luo family refused. It meant that they didn't want to trouble the people of the prince's mansion. They couldn't blame them if they didn't go in. Although it was because they didn't attach great importance to the girl, they didn't think much about it because it was the Luo family's idea. However, they didn't know that in the 3rd branch of the Luo family, Luo Jingying was having a big argument with her mother for the first time in history. To be more precise, it was Luo Jingying who was throwing a tantrum one-sidedly. Because in the end, Luo Jingying only brought a bag of 5,000 taels of silver, most of which were given by Prince Rui. When Luo Jingqiang got married, she had 5,000 taels of silver as her savings. Now, without dowry, she only had 5,000 taels of silver. She couldn't even compare to Luo Jingqiang, who was born of a concubine. How could she let it go? Naturally, she flew into a rage and smashed everything. What could you do with 5,000 taels of silver? If it was in an ordinary family, 5,000 taels of silver was enough for 4 people to eat for a lifetime. But in an ordinary family, the dowry for a daughter of an official was about 3,000 to 5,000 taels of silver. To a certain extent, this was already very good. It could be seen that the Luo family had accumulated a certain amount of wealth over the past 200 to 300 years. This sentence was not just empty words. However, in a real rich family, 5,000 taels of silver couldn't buy a set of decent head ornaments, nor could it buy a few boxes of the best rouge and face powder. Of course, Luo Jingying didn't know that the new boutique set of the Rouge Pavilion could only be bought with 5,000 taels of silver. Therefore, in Luo Jingying's eyes, this amount of money was like sending away a beggar. Mrs. Lu sneered. If I really give a beggar 5,000 taels of silver, his fate can be changed. He will be grateful to me. Giving you 5,000 taels of silver is like throwing a meat bun to a dog. Take it or leave it. If you don't want it, then get out. Our third branch can't use up 5,000 taels of silver in a year. It just so happens that I'm short of money now. Luo Jingying looked at her mother with a broken face. Although Mrs. Lu had been ignoring her these days, she thought that Mrs. Lu was still angry and wouldn't ignore her. But today, she really understood that her mother really didn't care about her. When Mrs. Lu knew that she was going to enter Prince Rui's mansion, she was very happy and wanted to prepare things for her. But now, she was ruthless to this extent. From childhood to adulthood, was her mother's love for her all fake? Mrs. Lu's attitude towards Luo Jingying was actually not too abrupt. After being disappointed again and again, she was a little cold-hearted. But Luo Jingying didn't notice it. And Mrs. Lu didn't notice it herself. After finding out that Luo Jingying was an ungrateful wretch, she suddenly burst out and acted ruthlessly. Good. Since it's like this, from now on we'll break off all ties. Even if you kneel at my feet and beg me in the future, don't think that I'll call you mother again. Luo Jingying angrily picked her up and turned to leave. Luo Jingying indeed didn't call Mrs. Lu mother in front of her again. It wasn't like she said, even if Mrs. Lu knelt and begged, she wouldn't call her mother, but she didn't have the chance. In the future, when she was in pain and despair, how many days and nights did she call her mother, but she never got a response. Thinking back to the days in the Luo family, how happy it was. Even if she was humiliated by Luo Jingwan, it made her feel nostalgic. But at that time, she didn't even have the qualifications to mention Luo Jingwan. Even the people in Prince Rui's mansion said, Jin Qin Wang Fei has a cousin like you, it's really shameful. Along the way, many servants saw Luo Jingying, but they only took a few glances and then went on with their own things. They treated her as if she didn't exist, let alone stop and greet her. Luo Jingying's gaze flew towards them like a knife. Unfortunately, she met people who also had a small temper and would even show a provocative smile at her. Luo Jingying still had reason, so she didn't pounce on them and tear them apart. However, she didn't want to stay in this place for a moment longer. Thus, she quickened her pace, but secretly vowed in her heart that in the future, she would definitely return here with an aloof attitude and kill all the people who were disrespectful to her. It wasn't until she was about to leave that Luo Jingying slowed down her pace and tidied up her attire. At this moment, the things that Mrs. Lu had taught her before seemed to have returned. Even if she was kneeling, she couldn't show her inferiority. She had to be neither servile nor overbearing. Even if her attire was a bit poor, she had to maintain a perfect bearing. Thus, unconsciously, Luo Jingying learned the behavior of Jingwan. Luo Jingying didn't realize how deep Jingwan's influence on her was. The nanny sent by Li Hongming was given the same surname as his princess, Lu. She had been serving Li Hongming since he was a child. When she was old enough, she didn't go out of the palace. Instead, she combed herself into a nanny and served Li Hongming all the time. She was loyal to Li Hongming and followed his will as her first creed. Even Li Hongming respected her. Therefore, although this nanny was a servant, she was probably the most powerful woman in Prince Rue's mansion except for Princess Rue. Princess Rue didn't dare to neglect her, and the other concubines could only fawn on Li Hongming. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653097. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com mobile edition. Chapter 151. Although Nanny Lu had such doubts, she didn't ask. It was better for Prince Rue's mansion to not bring anyone with them. The servants would be arranged by them. From the beginning, all the initiative would be in their hands. This person would also be under their control. Therefore, they didn't need to care about her actual situation. Whether it was good or bad, it was all up to Prince Rue's mansion. Although Luo Jingying was a little stupid, she didn't want people in Prince Rue's mansion to see that she was not liked by her family. That would be too embarrassing. Although she believed that Prince Rue wouldn't dislike her because of this, it would be better for her to get along well with her family. Luo Jingying was confident and a little conceited. However, she had been ignoring the uneasiness in her heart. She repeatedly clamored to others to show that she would be unspeakably noble in the future. She was also using this method to hypnotize herself over and over again. Only in this way could she maintain her pride. Because everyone had their own thoughts, Luo Jingying directly got into the sedan chair without saying anything after a reserved and shy salute. When the curtain of the sedan chair was put down, the smile on Luo Jingying's face could no longer be maintained. There was no doubt that she yearned for the prince's mansion. However, she was now sitting in this small sedan. The people who were just a short distance away were all strangers to her. She felt an inexplicable sense of panic. Subconsciously, she turned sideways and lifted the curtain of the window. She looked at the door that was gradually shrinking. Nanny Lu subconsciously wanted to scold Luo Jingying. However, when she saw Luo Jingying's longing expression and the tears that she held back, she didn't say anything in the end. Perhaps this was the last time they would see each other, so she didn't need to be so strict. On the other hand, Prince Rue had invited his brothers to a banquet today. Even though he had only invited a concubine, he was still very happy. After all, the brothers were often on good terms with one another, using various excuses to get to know each other. However, after knowing the identity of this concubine, it was obvious that he wasn't just looking for an excuse to invite them to a banquet. Under these circumstances, Li Hongming was able to silently carry the young lady of the Luo family back to the Fu. No one would believe that there was no problem here. Especially Prince Kong. The way he looked at Li Hongming was as if Prince Rue had snatched away his woman. Li Hongming's smile was still there, and there was even a hint of provocation in it. He didn't steal his woman. Prince Kong was so angry that he almost smashed his cup. Luo Rongping, how dare he give his daughter to his biggest enemy when he swore to be loyal to him? Anyway, even if they were brothers, they would only pretend in front of Lu Qingdi occasionally. Prince Kong flicked his sleeves and left. Prince Kang's hardcore brothers also made excuses to leave one after another. Li Hongming just smiled and sent them off. He had no intention of asking them to stay. As long as he achieved his goal, he didn't need to care about anything else. As for how Luo Rongping would appease his good brother's anger, that was his own business. If he couldn't even handle such a small matter, how could he work for him? After Prince Kong returned to the Fu, he directly summoned Luo Rongping without saying anything. He even made a big fuss. His intention was actually similar to Li Hongming's. Therefore, a small matter that was originally a small matter was made into a big deal by these two brothers. However, because of the Luo family's position, there were many twists and turns. Other people didn't express their opinions on this matter for the time being. Besides, they actually wanted to know when the Grand Secretary offended the Minister of the Ministry of Personnel. After all, Luo Peishan's actions against Ruan Ruizhong were too obvious. Except for some things that didn't need to be considered at all, every time Ruan Ruizhong raised an opinion, Luo Peishan would hold a completely leftist opinion. In addition, Ruan Ruizhong's students were also implicated by Luo Peishan. Those who were related to Ruan Ruizhong and had a close relationship with him were all people that Luo Peishan focused on taking care of. Therefore, no matter which side these people belonged to, there were signs of danger everywhere. After all, Ruan Ruizhong was someone who had been in the officialdom for decades. The people who were close to him were not only his relatives and friends, but also many of his students. They were inexplicably implicated by him. Even if Luo Peishan was doing things by the book, he didn't do anything to anyone else but him. As soon as Ruan Ruizhong discovered that the situation was wrong, he summoned Luo Peishan. As the saying goes, even if you die, you have to know the reason why. Unfortunately, all he got in return was Luo Peishan's mockery and ridicule. As for the specific reason, he didn't get a single word. No matter how astute the Grand Secretary was, without the slightest hint, he still couldn't guess the reason. However, Ruan Ruizhong still knew Luo Peishan's character. Even if he was an old fox in the officialdom, he still adhered to some principles and kept some bottom lines. Because of this, Ruan Ruizhong didn't take any action for the time being. Since he couldn't get the reason from Luo Peishan, he would investigate from other places. However, this matter must be done quickly. Otherwise, when Luo Peishan presented some evidence of his crimes to Lu Chengdi, he would suffer immeasurable losses. Even if he was neutral, Qi Yuan's officialdom couldn't be supported by one person. Prince Kong had never been a good-tempered person. When he saw Luo Rongping, he directly kicked him. If it weren't for someone who stopped him, even if Luo Rongping didn't die, he would be half dead. Luo Rongping's explanation to Prince Kong was naturally to push all the blame to Li Hongming, saying that Prince Rui had abducted his daughter. As for the matter that his daughter was going to marry into Prince Rui's mansion, he didn't know until 2 days ago. At that time he came to see Prince Kong. "You didn't see me, so it has nothing to do with me." Prince Kong also knew from the gatekeeper that Luo Rongping did see him, and he did refuse to see him. Li Hongyi would never admit that Li Hongming's complacency today had a small part to do with him. Although Li Hongyi let Luo Rongping leave, the suspicion in his heart didn't disappear. In other words, after Luo Rongping's daughter entered Li Hongming's backyard, it was impossible for him to completely trust him. In-laws were the most mainstream way to build relationships. Therefore, Prince Kong issued an order to keep an eye on Luo Rongping. Once the evidence of his betrayal was found, Prince Kong would never let him go. Li Hongming knew from the beginning that Luo Rongping's daughter entered his backyard, and he was purely a chess piece to contain the Luo family. Luo Peishan, who was in such a high position, was not trusted by his good brother because of his alienation, let alone Luo Rongping. Therefore, it was a big joke for him to be a nail in Li Hongyi's camp. He didn't care at all how Li Hongyi would deal with Luo Rongping. He even hoped that Li Hongyi would be as ruthless as possible. As for Li Hongyuan and Jingwan's marriage, under the supervision of imperial concubine Su, the auspicious date was quickly set. Because Li Hongyi was the eldest son, when he married, the things he used, no matter what, were naturally the best. The rest of the princes would more or less be subtracted from this foundation. For example, Li Hongming, Li Hongyuan, who had a mother who was favored and had a high status at most, would be subtracted by 1 level. The imperial household department had long been familiar with preparing the betrothal gifts for Jin Qin Wang. It was still the same as before, so the speed was very fast. However, just when they thought that everything was ready, the living king of hell personally came. After taking a look at the things, he said one word: exchange. Then, he directly left his personal attendant behind. Then, Mu Gonggong smilingly watched the imperial household department exchange things. Once, twice, thrice, Mu Gonggong shook his head. The people of the imperial household department were very irritable, but they couldn't vent a single word. They could only curry favor with Mu Gonggong in hopes of giving pointers. Then Mu Gonggong mercifully gave a sentence. Wang Ye was not short of money, and even more not short of good things. They understood. Wasn't it because the quantity and quality of the things they prepared were insufficient? But even if they understood, they wanted to curse their mother even more. There was no other way. This kind of thing was not something they could decide. They could only report it to the Empress. The Empress was naturally very tolerant. With a wave of her hand, Jin Qinhuang could do whatever he wanted. With this sentence they were relieved. Then they exchanged things one by one. The quantity doubled, and tripled. When Mu Gonggong nodded his head in satisfaction, the people of the imperial household department were simply about to collapse. However, when they saw the final list, their hands trembled and their hearts trembled. This was probably more than all the other Wang Ye's gifts added together. After thinking about it, they finally gave the list to the Empress again. After the Empress saw it, she was silent for a long time. According to the moral character of that living king of hell, if they didn't satisfy him, would he prepare it himself? A dignified Qin Wang had to prepare betrothal gifts himself. The emperor's face didn't need any more. But this thing was really too much. In terms of value, it was even more than the betrothal gifts of the Qin Wang Fei. Finally, the list was handed over to Lu Chengdi. For this kind of thing, Lu Chengdi naturally wouldn't care. He didn't even look at the list. On the contrary, Su Guifei felt that it was a bit inappropriate. Moreover, for what reason did her son do this? Was it really because he fancied Luo San Gunyang? Or was there some other reason? On the day of the wedding, the people of Jin Qinhuang Fu sent over a pair of wild geese. Not only were they full of spirit, they were taller than the average wild geese. Their feathers were also smooth and bright. Looking at the two pure gold wild geese, no matter how gorgeous they were also dead objects without the slightest bit of spiritual energy. The pure gold wild geese were naturally abandoned. The Luo family, the wedding invigilator, presented the ceremonial items in the courtyard. When the Luo family saw these things, they were speechless for a while. As the saying goes, rich people are willful. But to be willful to the extent of Jin Qinhuang, it was really rare. Jingwan faintly felt that something seemed to be out of control. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653098. HTML chapter error. Click here to report, exempt from registration. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com Biku Go mobile reading website. Bicken. Chapter 152. However, compared to Luo Peishan's dissatisfaction with Jin Qinhuang, old Madame Luo's acceptance was quite high. In fact, his current actions were similar to Duchess Ding's, but the nature was different. Jin Qinhuang drew hatred for Jingwen, but he could withstand it. Even if those people were angry, they could not burn Jingwen. His fundamental purpose was to give the best to his wife, and the most, in a word, to give his wife face. It was reasonable to say that for the imperial family, there were many things that had to be done according to the rules. Jin Qinhuang's Nikalai was too excessive, so it was not surprising that Jin Qinhuang was impeached. However, this matter was related to this living king of hell. The so-called impeachment was just a formality. It was all because of his duty. What happened in the end was Lu Chengdi's business. At this time, Lu Chengdi knew what that evil spawn had done. Even if you want to add something, you should take it easy. Moreover, the Nikalai was so generous now. What about the betrothal gifts in the future? Are you going to empty the imperial household department? Raising such a prodigal son, it was sad to think about it. In the end, the matter was left unsettled because His Majesty had personally looked over Nikolai's list. At that time he did not have any objections. Naturally, he could not contradict himself now, so Lu Chengdi took the blame himself. However, Lu Chengdi, who took the blame like this, was unhappy and pulled his evil spawned son over to reprimand him. However, a certain someone was bored to death. Lu Chengdi scolded him and felt that it was boring. Then, for some reason, his gossipy spirit came. "Do you really like the third miss of the Luo family?" Li Hongyuan glanced at him indifferently. Where did Imperial Father come to such a conclusion? Was Nikolai's generosity not enough? Lu Chengdi narrowed his eyes and looked at his son, who had a perfect appearance. If he liked her, his performance before the marriage was bestowed was not the least bit like that. Moreover, according to his temperament, if he liked her, he would have snatched her long ago. Why would he wait until now? What did they do to make you unhappy? Looking at Lu Chengdi, Li Hongyuan sneered in his heart. Even if Lu Chengdi had been deeply in love and had been infatuated with thousands of possibilities, he still could not figure out the real reason. In Lu Chengdi's eyes, as long as he could be happy, nothing else mattered. If these Nikalis could make him happy, it did not matter even if there were more. Therefore, this kind of external things would not be a display of his son's concern. Lu Chengdi was just that self-righteous. He only knew how to use his tyrannical power to plunder what he wanted. Everyone said that he, Li Hongyuan, lived the most unbridled life, doing whatever he wanted. But in reality that was not the case. He did not have the absolute right to be unbridled. He also had many scruples. However, he was not far from that day. The next day, a small storm was stirred in the seemingly normal capital because Master Liaochen had entered the capital. Master Liaochen had wandered the world but rarely entered the capital. Even an imperial edict might not be able to invite him. Of course, Lu Chengdi did not need to use this to show his authority. Only a fool would do such a thing. In the eyes of the public, Master Liaochen was a living Buddha. If they could invite him home, it would not only bring them face, it would also be a great blessing. However, before Lu Chengdi did anything, no one dared to act rashly. As expected, Lu Chengdi sent someone to invite Master Liaochen to the palace as soon as he heard the news. Master Liaochen did not refuse and gladly accepted. Lu Chengdi received the news personally at the palace gates. Lu Chengdi put aside his official business for the time being. He wanted to listen to Master Liaochen's Buddhist teachings. Even in the palace, Master Liaochen was no different from when he was in the temple. Therefore, he did not object to Lu Chengdi's request. Others could also listen if they wanted. In the end, there were a few more concubines, princes, and even old princes from the previous generation. For 2 hours, no matter how patient or impatient they were, they all maintained a calm expression. It didn't matter if they were faking it or if Master Liaochen really had the ability to calm them down. In short, Lu Chengdi was very satisfied with the result. Master Liaochen would stay in the capital for 3 days. During this time, the Empress had already arranged a place for him to stay. Lu Chengdi knew that Master Liaochen wouldn't allow him to stay. State affairs were more important. But before he left, he hesitated. "Master, my 6th son's marriage hasn't been going well. Could you please match their 8 characters this time?" This was Master Liaochen's purpose in coming to the capital. Naturally, he nodded. Lu Chengdi was overjoyed. He hurriedly ordered someone to bring Jingwan and Li Hongyuan's birth characters. Master Liaochen looked at their birth characters. He'd promised Li Hongyuan to give him a splendid match after his marriage with Jingwan was settled. Even if it was inappropriate, he was willing to do something for the sake of the world. But after looking at their birth characters, he didn't need to do anything extra. These two were truly meant to be together. Lu Chengdi and noble consort Su were both uneasy. What if it was still inappropriate? A match made in heaven, a marriage that comes once in 1,000 years. Master Liaochen smiled warmly. Master, are you serious? Lu Chengdi was overjoyed, but quickly recovered. Please forgive me, Master. I was just overjoyed. I didn't mean to question you. It's fine. Lu Chengdi felt like a boulder had been lifted from his heart. He didn't have to worry about that bastard's marriage anymore. Speaking of the previous marriages, the birth characters hadn't been bad. It was just that there had been problems every time, so much so that the later statements had been reserved. Lu Qingdi didn't bother to ask if they were true or not. But Master Liaochen was different. He could be suspected of anyone, but not Master Liaochen. So far, Master Liaochen's words had never been wrong. Lu Chengdi was in such a good mood that he felt the wind under his feet as he walked. What happened after that was logical and there was nothing wrong with it. After the ceremony, the Luo family received a letter of engagement from the imperial family. All that was left was to wait for Jingwan's hairpin ceremony. It wasn't that Lu Chengdi hadn't considered marrying his son before Jingwan's hairpin ceremony. It was the same reason why he'd quickly set the wedding date for Li Hongyuan and son Yijia. A long delay could lead to trouble. But thinking about how the wedding date had been so rushed, he decided to let nature take its course. Now that he'd taken Master Liaochen's reassurance, there was even less of a hurry. This time, Madame Luo was personally taking care of the letter of engagement. Her daughter-in-law and whatnot couldn't care less. Master Liaochen's comments quickly spread. Those who'd bet on Jingwan's death began to reconsider. Was it too late to withdraw their bets? After all, it was obvious that he was losing in all sorts of ways. But taking back what they'd already given away. Haha, they were daydreaming. Everyone believed in this marriage made in heaven, but there was always someone who didn't. Ruan Fengfei, who had always had a smooth sailing life since she was born, easily got rid of all the obstacles in her way. However, ever since she met Luo Jingwen, it was as if she had met her nemesis. Not only did everything go wrong, she even hurt her face. That's right, she blamed her accident on Jingwen. Ruan Fengfei looked at her face in the mirror. Her face was distorted like a ghost. She wasn't Sun Yijia. Like a woman, she cared about her face very much, even more than many people. Even though her mother had told her that there wouldn't be any obvious scars on her face, Ruan Fengfei, who pursued perfection in everything, couldn't tolerate the slightest flaw. Covering her face, Ruan Fengfei smiled eerily. A match made in heaven. Whether it's a match made in heaven or not, it's up to me. What Ruan Fengfei hated even more was not the amount of gifts given to Jingwen, but Li Hongyuan's personal involvement in this matter. Ruan Fengfei felt that the first time she saw Luo Jingwen, she was abnormally hateful, and it wasn't without reason. Which family is having a banquet recently? Ruan Fengfei asked coldly. Although it wasn't that she hadn't seen Ruan Fengfei like this before, but every time she saw her, it made people shudder with fear. Miss, the 17th of May is Gong Qin Wangfei's birthday. According to tradition, there will be a banquet. Tell my mother that I want to attend. Luo Jingwen was Jin Qinhuang's current fiancée. Although she was also waiting to be married, it was still early. There was no reason for her not to attend her future sister-in-law's birthday banquet. The people who served Ruan Fengfei never had the right to make suggestions, let alone the right to speak. What she decided, others only needed to obey. There were only a few days left before Gong Qin Wangfei's birthday banquet, so the Luo family naturally received the invitation early. Jingwen even received one alone. Later, Jingwen also learned that Ruan Fengfei would also go. Jingwen could roughly guess her purpose. Well, Ruan Fengfei was not afraid of being pointed out by others when she went out, so how could Jingwen be afraid of facing her? On that day, Jingwen went out in a splendid dress. Compared with the dress that Great Elder Princess prepared for her on the day when she recognized Great Elder Princess as her adoptive mother, Jingwen's dress was not inferior. She took 2 of the 4 maids, plus Baishao, Sister He, and Mammy Gong. This time she went out as a guest, which was probably the most grand occasion. Even if she was said to be a fox pretending to be a tiger as soon as she became Jin Qinhuang's fiancée, she didn't hesitate to do so. Madame Luo was very satisfied with Jingwan's dress. It was natural for her to rise with the tide. If she still wore the same dress as before, she might be said to be narrow-minded, even if this characteristic could never be found on Jingwan. Sitting in a small sedan chair, Lin Mingya entered the second gate of Prince Gong's mansion and met the Gong Qin Wangfei, who personally greeted her. Although it was not the first time they met, it was the first time that they got along as future sisters-in-law. It was said that Li Hongyuan's behavior made Jingwan hate him. Most of them were the princesses of Li Hongyuan's brothers. Because of her father, the Gong Qin Wangfei lived very unscrupulously in the Gong Qin Wangfu. Even though she had been married for many years, she still had some of the spoiled and unruly attitude she had before she was married. There wasn't even the slightest bit of sorrow on her face. The Gong Qin Wangfei wanted to give Jingwan a show of strength. First, she wanted to suppress her aura. However, the idea was good, but in the face of the smiling Jingwan, her aura was useless. When she saw the people Jingwan brought, she even suspected that Jingwan was here to give her a show of strength. Since the Gong Qin Wangfei did not achieve her goal, she did not do anything unnecessary. If she went too far, she would lose her face. Her gaze fell on Sun Yijia's face. Yijia is becoming more and more beautiful. This makeup is really good. Sun Yijia nodded and accepted her praise as a matter of course. As for whether it was true or false, who cared? The Gong Qin Wangfei covered her mouth. Yijia's temperament is still the same. She hasn't changed at all. Everything is going well in the in-laws' house. There's nothing to change. Sun Yijia said indifferently. That's true. But I heard that the Luo family's third young master loves his first wife. He doesn't even look at the other women outside. Outside, there were rumors that she was a rouge tiger, but it had already reached her ears. Sun Yijia nodded. Wangfei Nyongyang is also not far off. If they were really talking about rouge tigers, the number one was really not her, Sun Yijia. Sure enough, the Gong Qin Wangfei shut her mouth. She took care of the Gong prince. Even if there were women with official status in the house, she would not easily let them get close to the Gong prince. Even if she had already given birth to a legitimate son, other women would occasionally be taken advantage of by her, but the next day, she would send people to force them to prevent pregnancy. It was rumored that there was once a pregnant concubine who was beaten to death by her. Without waiting for them to enter the courtyard, the people of the Ruan family arrived. Seeing Ruan Fengfei's face covered, many people whispered, "Ah, she really hurt her face." It must be said that as the capital's twin beauties, both had disfigured faces. Shouldn't they be sympathizing with each other? Unfortunately, these two people didn't even make eye contact. However, Ruan Fengfei glanced at Sun Yijia. That strange but beautiful makeup made her eyes darken. Even if many people compared the two of them, Ruan Fengfei didn't take Sun Yijia seriously. However, after a similar experience, the other party didn't have any effect. Instead, she was getting better and better. Ruan Fengfei was like a clown who couldn't see through. No matter how she thought about it, it was very unpleasant. Jingwan moved a step, blocking Ruan Fengfei's line of sight on Sun Yijia's face. Miss Ruan is well. Miss Luo is well. It was a very peaceful scene, but it made people feel like sparks were flying everywhere. It was really strange. The Gong Qin Wangfei didn't know what was going on, but her heart couldn't help but beat faster. Today's feeling wasn't right. Welcoming the two families to the back garden, it was the season of blooming flowers. No matter which family's courtyard it was, there was a scenery to see. When they faintly heard voices coming from the garden, their group met another person. Greetings to the Gong Prince. Greetings to the Jin Prince. The Gong Prince called for them to be excused. Then, everyone saw Li Hongyuan walk straight to Ruan Fengfei. What was he doing? The others couldn't help but look at Jingwan. Before, there were rumors that the Jin Prince cared a lot about the Luo Sangunyang, but now there was a good show to watch. Ruan Fengfei's eyes were watery as she slightly raised her head to look at Li Hongyuan. Jingwan looked at her. Sure enough, this pervert really liked the Jin Prince. Li Hongyuan suddenly reached out and took off Ruan Fengfei's veil. The deep affection in Ruan Fengfei's eyes quickly retreated, and she subconsciously reached out to cover her face. Li Hongyuan's other hand reached out and blocked her hand. Ben Wang heard that you were disfigured, so he wanted to see it with his own eyes to see if it was true. This person became ugly, so her brain doesn't work well. If it doesn't work, then learn from others. Next time when you go out, remember to cover it up. It's so ugly, it's not good to scare people. He threw the veil on her face and turned to leave. Digression. https://www.yanguiwaiwo.com/11/11807/6653104. HTML chapter error. Click here to report, registration free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.yanguiwaiwo.com. Bikugo mobile version reading website, M. Yanguiwaiwo. Chapter 153. Ruan Fengfei slightly raised her head. At this time, no one would think that she was trying to maintain her pride. It was the weight of the veil that caused her to tilt her head back. The blood on her face also rapidly receded. In a flash, her face was as white as paper. Even if it was the people who were originally watching for fun at this time, there was a trace of pity in their hearts. Jin Qinhuang's words were unavoidably too vicious. Not to mention anything else, in any case, she was still half your fiancé. She shouldn't. Well, perhaps it was because of this relationship that Jin Qinhuang would be like this. It had nothing to do with him, and he wouldn't even give her a second glance. Who didn't know that Jin Qinhuang was fond of beauties? It would be strange if he still liked her after her face was disfigured. Sun Yijia felt pity for Ruan Fengfei. Should she rejoice now that Jin Qinhuang was still being lenient towards her? However, even if he wasn't being lenient, it didn't matter. Who would care? Thinking of some of her own conjectures, Sun Yijia's pity disappeared without a trace in a flash. During the Dragon Boat Festival, Wan Mimi was schemed against. She only asked Wan Mimi who she met during that time and what she did. The biggest suspect was her, Ruan Fengfei. She also had a reason to scheme against Wan Mimi. Sun Yijia looked at Jingwen. Her expression was unusually indifferent. This was not in line with Wan Mimi's nature. She didn't admire Jin Qinhuang. Based on this point alone, she wouldn't have any opinion about Ruan Fengfei. It could be seen that Wan Mimi's attitude must have other reasons. Between Jingwan and outsiders, no matter who was right or wrong, Sun Yijia would naturally always stand on Jingwan's side. Moreover, Wan Mimi wasn't someone who took the initiative to stir up trouble. The root must be Ruan Fengfei. Therefore, Sun Yijia glanced at Ruan Fengfei. She deserved it. Ruan Fengfei's nature was vicious, but her temperament was far from being invincible. If there was anyone in the world who could make her collapse with just a few words, other than Li Hongyuan, there was no other choice. There was probably nothing more hurtful than being humiliated in public by the person you liked. Li Hongyuan was narrow-minded and would not allow anyone to hurt Jingwan. Similarly, he was selfish by nature and would not hesitate to abandon someone who was no longer of value. However, if such a person did not know what was good for him, he could not blame him for ruthlessly trampling on him a few times. Don't expect him to have the slightest bit of mercy. Before this, Ruan Fengfei still thought that Li Hongyuan cared about her. But at this moment, if such a ruthless slap didn't wake her up from her daydream, then she would really be the stupidest person in the world. Thinking about all the times they interacted in the past, when had he ever given her the slightest bit of gentleness? Could it be that just because he didn't ruthlessly expel her, she thought that he was different from the rest? She never thought that she was wrong. This was true, but it didn't mean that she wasn't clear-headed. It was probably true that everything had always been smooth sailing. There was nothing that she couldn't get if she wanted. In her opinion, she had talent and beauty. Not to mention the entire capital, even in the entire Qi Yuan, there was no one who could stand shoulder to shoulder with her. If she fancied a man, he would be infatuated with her. It was just that there were too many people like this, and they had always been successful. She thought that even if Li Hongyuan was different, the final result would not change at all. So, it wasn't like that. However, since she fancied him, then he must be hers. If she couldn't get him, she would rather destroy him than give him to others. Ruan Fengfei raised her head, as if she wanted to force back her tears. Unfortunately, it didn't have the slightest effect. Tears still rolled down her cheeks like a broken string of beads. Her appearance really made people's hearts ache. On the day of the Dragon Boat Festival, the Gong Prince's face was severely damaged by Li Hongyuan. Even now, his anger still hadn't subsided. If it wasn't for the fact that he had no other choice, he wouldn't have invited him. He originally thought that he wouldn't attend as usual, but who knew that today he would go crazy? Not only did he come, he also ran around everywhere. If it wasn't for the fact that he was worried that he would cause trouble, or to be exact, he was worried that he would put a green hat on his head. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had the patience to follow him around like an attendant. Now that a beauty was crying, well, even if he didn't look at the place where she was hurt, she was still a beauty. It really aroused his inner desire to protect her. Sixth brother, aren't you going too far with your words? Li Hongyuan's footsteps paused and he turned around. What position do you have to say this? What does she have to do with you? That's right, her old man is the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet. Each and every one of you wants to win him over. So naturally you're all drooling over his most valuable daughter. Doesn't this prince have reason to suspect that you've already secretly hooked up with her? If it's not you, then it's someone else. Or is it that Ruan Ruizhong is casting a wide net, and you're all involved? The Gong Prince thought if that's really the case, then it's good. On the other hand, old Madame Ruan's face was ashen with anger. While comforting Ruan Fengfei, she looked at Jean Prince with a gaze like a knife. Wang Ye, don't make venomous slander. Li Hongyuan sneered. Is this prince wrong? 16 years old, not only is she unmarried, she hasn't even been married once. If there isn't something fishy going on, who would believe it? If Ruan Ruizhong is really upright, then is there a problem with your daughter? This prince has no power or influence, and Fu Huang inexplicably stuffed this person into my hands. Do each and every one of you really think this prince is easy to bully, that I'm a sucker? Originally, the place where the other female guests were seated was relatively close. Now, it naturally attracted the attention of many people. That curiosity, everyone had it. Those close by directly pricked up their ears, and those far away saw this situation and came over one after another. Li Hongyuan didn't lower his voice. As soon as he spoke, it caused a small commotion. What Jean Prince said seemed to make a lot of sense. Apart from those child wives, this girl, when she was younger, even when she was 7 or 8 years old, she started looking for a man. Later, at most, she was 13 or 14 years old. There really wasn't anyone like Ruan Fengfei. Previously, Sun Yijia's situation was somewhat similar to hers, but although she didn't talk about marriage, she had Prince Kong, that well-known partner. Only Ruan Fengfei's shadow was completely absent. Once the seed of doubt was planted, when they looked at Ruan Fengfei again, their gazes were particularly strange. It was no wonder that Jean Prince didn't speak kindly to such a beauty before, and even delayed marrying her back to the Fu. If it was any other man, it would be the same. This girl, no matter how beautiful her face was, no matter how talented she was, if her reputation was ruined, it was all in vain. Old Madame Ruan was so angry that she gnashed her teeth. Why didn't her own daughter talk about marriage? It was fine if other people didn't know, but he clearly knew, yet he still said such words. Those who liked him were all blind, and her stubborn daughter was the first blind. When did our Ruan family offend Wang Ye, to let Wang Ye humiliate us like this? Merely stating facts. If old Madame Ruan feels that it is humiliating, then so be it. Li Hongyuan. Ruan Fengfei suddenly opened her mouth. Her voice was sharp and her eyes were filled with hatred. You will regret it, you will definitely regret it. Directly calling Ben Wang's name. Is this a rule taught by the Ruan family? Li Hongyuan coldly said. Wang Ye, please forgive me. My daughter was only angry for a moment and didn't mean to be disrespectful to you. Old Madame Ruan hurriedly apologized. This kind of crime on the big side. Could be said that Ruan Ruizhong didn't teach his daughter well, which was enough to impeach him. On the small side, it could be said that Ruan Fengfei didn't follow the rules, and when she met someone with strict rules, she couldn't help but be slapped. For Ruan Ruizhong's sake, Ben Wang can overlook it. However, Ben Wang will wait and see how you prepare to make Ben Wang regret it. This time, Li Hongyuan really left, leaving the crowd with a black figure. No matter how proud Ruan Fengfei was, no matter what kind of psychological preparation she did before coming, she couldn't continue to stay here. She turned around and walked back to Li Hongyuan. Her back stopped, maintaining her dignity and pride. Then, another family just happened to come in from outside. When they saw Ruan Fengfei's appearance, they couldn't help but stand to the side. Then, when the Ruan family left, they couldn't help but look at each other. What happened? It turned out that the rumors were true. Ruan Fengfei was really disfigured. Then when they saw Sun Yijia, this makeup was really good. Then they remembered that she was also disfigured. What happened this year? The capital's twin beauties were all disfigured. From the beginning to the end, Jingwan watched indifferently. Because the target of Jin Qinhuang's poisonous tongue was the enemy. Her heart was somewhat carefree. But to say that the feeling was very strong, it wasn't to the extent. No matter what kind of suffering Ruan Fengfei suffered, it wouldn't make her feel anything. Giving that kind of strong emotion was a waste. However, Jingwan actually felt that Jin Qinhuang's behavior was a bit strange. His nature was cold and ruthless. If he didn't like her, then he didn't like her. He could have done it more simply and crudely. It seemed that there was no need to use such a roundabout method. Comparing the two, the former was more damaging to one's reputation. As for the latter, the most obvious thing was that Ruan Fengfei would be surrounded by rumors and slanders, becoming the topic of conversation for everyone in the capital. Her previous good reputation was now a bad reputation. The higher she was praised before, the more miserable she would fall now. Just like a piece of white paper, if dirty water suddenly splashed on it, it would be very obvious. If it was a piece of black paper, then even if it was soaked in ink and then picked up, it would still be the same. The former was like Ruan Fengfei, the latter was like Li Hongyuan. Therefore, Jin Qinhuang's reputation couldn't be worse. It didn't matter if it was tarnished, but this time he didn't do so. Unable to figure it out, Jingwan also didn't think about it. It was naturally better not to have to constantly guard against Ruan Fengfei's tricks. The Gong Qinhuang Fei's birthday was far less lively than great elder princesses. After all, except for the important people, the rest of the people invited were the Gong Qinhuang's faction. Before the banquet, there were only so many activities. If it wasn't some small games, it was reciting poems and so on. It was very boring. Now, Jingwan was now a person who attracted a lot of attention. Naturally, there were people who wanted her to participate. Jingwan naturally refused all of them. If it was something she wasn't good at, why should she hit her face until it was swollen? Luo San Gunyong isn't good at it. Why don't you play something you're good at? Just think of it as celebrating the Gong Qinhuang Fei's birthday. Today's performance seemed to be the Gong Qinhuang Fu's performers. Suddenly, she was asked to play the zither. Was someone looking for trouble? But why did she want to entertain them? Wang Fei Nyang, please forgive me. Chenu's hand hurts today. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653105. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com. Bikugo mobile reading website. Bicken. Chapter 154. Jingwan's first reaction was, did she encounter an arrogant retard again? Could it be that this was the common logic of these people? Alright, in this place with a clear hierarchy, the other party belonged to the top of the food chain. It was natural for them to be aloof and think that their face was boundless. As long as there was even the slightest bit of dissatisfaction with their wishes, that would be sweeping away their face. These people, they could be ragged on the inside, but this face was sometimes more important than their lives. If they lost even the slightest bit, they could take out a stance that would not rest until they were dead. However, she seemed to have one foot in your class. Her grandfather and grandmother had said that she could live a bit more willfully, a bit more selfishly. Then now, she could refuse, so why would she use this kind of method to humiliate herself to give other people face? Although right now she was just a fox borrowing the tiger's might, completely relying on her fiancé's name. The so-called luck was a kind of strength. Being able to borrow power naturally also counted as a kind of strength. Moreover, even if she didn't have this fiancé, according to her grandfather's power and status, the Gongqin Wangfei couldn't do anything to her, right? Jingwan fiddled with the prayer beads on her wrist. She gave her a way out, but she couldn't be blamed if she lost face. Looking at the Gongqin Wangfei, she faintly smiled. If Wangfei Nyongyong insists on thinking like this subject girl has no opinion. Don't mention the Gongqin Wangfei. The vast majority of the people present didn't dare to believe it. Was this courage borrowed from the heavens? Impudent! The Gongqin Wangfei stood up and directly smashed the cup. The Gongqin Wangfei was thunderous with rage. The servants kept quiet out of fear. On the other hand, those people who were Li Hongyuan's sister-in-law or sister-in-law looked like they were watching a play on the wall. Jingwan remained unmoved, slightly tilting her head as if she was thinking about something. After a moment she stood up. If Wangfei Nyongyong doesn't welcome this subject girl, then just directly send out the guest order. There's no need to make it so ugly. Who is a fool? This subject girl will take her leave. Jingwan crouched down, unhurriedly turning around. Her gait was leisurely, truly preparing to leave. Gongqin Wangfei was so angry that her face turned ashen. Ever since she was born, no one dared to not give her face like this. What kind of place do you think this is? You don't want to come and go as you please. Then Jingwan was stopped in her tracks. Jingwan stopped and turned to look at Gongqin Wangfei. Then what does Wangfei Nyongyong want? Gongqin Wangfei sneered. Mama, tell our Luo third miss, what is the crime of disrespecting the imperial family? I think the princess consort has misunderstood. This minister's daughter is not disrespecting the royal family, but rather disrespecting a person who wants to humiliate this minister's daughter for no reason. Anyway, my grandfather is the minister of the Ministry of Personnel, and my foster mother is Great Elder Princess. It doesn't matter if I'm humiliated, but it's not good to implicate them. Your Highness, don't you think so? She was the dignified Qin Wangfei, yet she had humiliated others first. If she really wanted to pin a big hat on her, then she would have to come up with an explanation. If you admit your mistake first, then she will also admit that she disrespected the imperial family. When the time comes, even if she is punished, your Gongqin Wangfei's arrogant and despotic reputation will spread out. Jingwan was unmoved. From the beginning to the end, she was calm and even had a faint smile. In this world, naturally, there was no need to pursue equality. That thing had never been heard of. Even if it was an iron law in the privileged class, it could be regarded as a child's play. Jingwan was not born at the bottom, so relatively speaking, she still had some right to speak. Therefore, Jingwan still tried her best to protect herself and the people around her. Luo third miss is really sharp-tongued. Because this minister's daughter likes to tell the truth most of the time. She doesn't know how to beat around the bush, which is really not very likable. The reputation of being sharp-tongued was not a good thing for a girl, but Jingwan refuted it so easily, saying that she was not good. It didn't matter, everyone was not good together. While the Gongqin Wangfei was angered by Jingwan to the point of her liver hurting, on the male guest's side, Li Hongyuan was the first to hear the news. Originally he was drinking alone, but because Jingwan was there he didn't leave. Someone dared to bully his wife, but after all, that was a woman and also his sister-in-law. Directly making a move on her, even if it was reasonable, it would become unreasonable. Li Hongyuan directly had someone bring a large jug of wine, slapped open the seal, picked it up, and walked directly to the Gongqin Wangfei. The courtiers who were talking to the Gongqin Wangfei, seeing this living king of hell, hurriedly made excuses to leave, for fear of being implicated. The Gongqin Wangfei was stunned, then immediately realized something, subconsciously turning around. "Sixth brother, what's the matter?" It must be said Li Hongyuan's brothers, the most sullen thing was that they had to be polite from time to time, but there was one who didn't care. Even if they exploded in anger after turning around, you could only act as if nothing had happened and act like a good brother. Li Hongyuan slightly pushed upwards, tossing the jug up a bit, his hand moving down from the side, his palm supporting the bottom of the jug. "To fourth brother, it's just a jug of wine, please." Motherf asterisk cur, do you have to toast me one by one? Even a cow couldn't stand it a few times, right? One could tell just by smelling the wine. Not to mention a jug, even if it was half a jug, it would still cause one to collapse immediately. Lousy didn't provoke you right now. What the fuck are you playing at? Sixth brother, are you joking with fourth brother? It looks like fourth brother isn't willing to accept. Fourth brother, are you not giving this prince face? Li Hongyuan slightly narrowed his eyes, a ruthless aura condensing in his eyes, as if a man-eating beast was about to break out of its cage. The Gongqin Wangfei was startled by Li Hongyuan's gaze, unconsciously taking a step back. And it was this reaction that made the Gongqin Wangfei even angrier, the hands behind his back clenched tightly, the veins on the back of his hands bulging, trying to suppress his anger. His voice almost squeezed out from between his teeth. "Li Hongyuan, don't go too far. So, you really don't want to give me face? Why should this prince drink? How much face do you have?" The Gongqin Wangfei lowered his voice, but in this silent scene, there were too many people who heard his words. "You really don't want to drink?" The ruthlessness in Li Hongyuan's eyes seemed to fade a bit, as if saying that if you don't drink, then forget it. "If I don't drink, what can you do?" The Gongqin Wangfei was clearly prepared to be unyielding to the end. "It looks like this prince really can't do anything to you. In any case, your imperial father's son. This prince can't kill you," Li Hongyuan said, taking back his hand. The wine jar in his hand fell straight down. With a bang, wine and porcelain shards flew out. The Gongqin Wangfei hurriedly retreated. Naturally he was caught in the crossfire. Li Hongyuan stood in place, not moving, even if the porcelain shards splashed on his calf. He was indifferent. "They all say persimmons are easy to pinch, I can't touch you, but this prince actually has a lot of people I can touch." His gaze swept over the audience, and the people who heard him wanted to immediately dig a hole and bury themselves. But in fact, they didn't dare to move, afraid that if they moved, they would fall into the eyes of this living king of hell. "Where's Qin Tianming? What's a small fry? If you want to make a move, you need to find a big one, that way it'll be interesting." "Li Hongyuan, you dare." The Gongqin Wangfei almost jumped up in anger. He thought that he was unyielding, making Li Hongyuan, who never admitted defeat, admit defeat. This was something that even imperial father couldn't do. And he was a bit proud of himself. But the result, this bastard wanted to make a move on someone. It was even more unbearable than making a move on him. After all, Li Hongyuan still had some scruples, but his father-in-law, although he was a military general, Li Hongyuan's martial arts were definitely above the other side. If he really made a move on his father-in-law, it would highlight his incompetence, and it would make the people who supported him feel disappointed and bitterly disappointed. The damage was simply not on the same level. "Master, the left governor hasn't arrived yet. He should still be in the yamen." "That's right, it's only the imperial concubine's birthday, most of the people who came were women. It's already not bad for the courtiers to come and eat before the banquet. And that's to give the Gongqin Wangfei face. Most of them won't show up. Since Laozi isn't here, my son is fine." Li Hongyuan stretched out his hand, as if he was stretching his fingers. Not long after his voice fell, 3 of Qin Tianming's sons were dragged out by his guards, and like dead dogs, they were thrown in front of Li Hongyuan. This Laozi was clearly a tiger, but these 3 were trembling in fear, without the slightest bit of backbone. Li Hongyuan didn't hold back and directly lifted his foot to kick. The Gong Qin Wangfei wanted to stop him, but Li Hongyuan's foot just turned, easily avoiding him, and then he landed on whoever he wanted. In the blink of an eye, there was a series of wails, and the 3 were kicked out. And all of them were vomiting blood. 100% their internal organs were injured. The Gong Qin Wangfei's guts were about to burst. These were all his brothers-in-law, although they weren't his father-in-law's most valued eldest son, but 3 of his sons were in his house because he was injured. His father-in-law would put all the blame on him. In the end, the only one who couldn't bear the consequences would be him. After all, that was his biggest reliance, and it had nothing to do with Li Hongyuan. Qin Tianming didn't dare and couldn't touch Li Hongyuan. The Gong Qin Wangfei's eyes were red, and he directly wanted to pounce on Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan stepped aside. "Are you sure you want to fight with this prince? You fought with this prince first. If you're injured, you can't blame this prince." Stretching his wrist, there was obvious malice in his eyes. The Gong Qin Wangfei's reason came back a little, and more importantly, he saw Prince Kong in his line of sight. Thinking that this big brother of his was almost directly crippled by him, his heart was filled with fear, and he naturally showed a cowering posture. If his vassals saw this, he didn't know whether to be disappointed that he was a spineless coward, or gratified that he could bend and stand tall. "Why? Li Hongyuan, this prince only wants to ask you, why are you acting crazy for no reason?" https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653108. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com mobile edition. Chapter 155. Looking at Li Hongyuan's departing back, he even looked somewhat leisurely, while the Gong Prince stood in place, desperately restraining his anger. His eyes were red, as if they were about to pop out of their sockets. He looked exactly like an enraged beast. The enemy was clearly in front of him, but there was an invisible cage firmly binding him, unable to take a step forward. Until Li Hongyuan's figure disappeared, the Gong Prince was unable to return to his senses for a long time. At this moment, even Prince Kong and Prince Rui looked at their 4th brother and felt that he was a little pitiful. However, they had also suffered losses in the hands of that king of hell, so they couldn't sympathize with him. As for what happened to the female guests, they had to ask clearly. They didn't want their own family to make the same mistake. At that time, the one who would be unlucky would be themselves. The women of the inner compound cut his face. As a man, he couldn't bicker with them. After all, no matter how much of a scoundrel he was, he still needed this kind of bearing, so only men like them could bear it. He was so righteous and confident if it was someone else they would be the same. But far from his level, they wouldn't be able to vent their anger like him. Standing in Li Hongyuan's position, wasn't it very satisfying? And what happened here naturally reached the Gong Qin princess consort's ears at the first moment. Her own prince was ruthlessly humiliated. 3 brothers were kicked until they vomited blood, her vision darkened, and she almost fainted. And when she heard the reason, she wasn't stupid, she could still connect the dots. She looked at Jingwan again, as if she was dipped in poison, but her lips trembled, unable to spit out half a word. Among the sisters-in-law, she lived the most unscrupulously, and the least needed to play tricks. In this aspect, she was naturally weaker, but that didn't mean she was like Luo Jingying, without any self-awareness. If she blurted out something bad, perhaps that king of hell would put the debt on her husband and her family. The consequences were absolutely not something she could bear. The so-called disaster from the mouth was probably like this. Jingwan was baffled by the Gongqin princess consort's gaze. What kind of life and death enmity was there? Mu Gonggong walked over to Jingwan. "Third miss." Unconsciously, there was a bit of flattery. Jingwan slightly retreated a step. The people around Jin Qinhuang seemed to be a bit scary. "Greetings to eunuch. What instructions does eunuch have?" It was better not to offend her future husband's steward. Seeing Jingwan salute him, eunuch Mu hurriedly avoided her. Even if he had 9 lives and 9 guts, he didn't dare to accept it. But at the same time, she also realized that she had gone overboard. It was true that third Miss Luo was Master's most cherished person, but she herself did not know. If her actions were too obvious, not only would she fail to please Master, but she would also be frightened. When she returned, she could probably prepare to die. Thus, she hurriedly straightened her face. "Third young lady, this servant doesn't deserve this. Master asked this servant to inform Miss that Miss can return with your family." Since she was not happy to stay here, she naturally did not need to stay any longer. So to say, Gongqin Wangfei's change in expression should be related to Jin Wangwang. Since he had already asked her to go back, she was more than happy to do so. Anyway, if she hadn't been stopped, she would have already left. So she nodded, and then she saluted everyone high and mighty. There was no need to call her family. Just now, when Jingwan was preparing to leave, they had already stood up. Jingwan looked at old Madame Luo and nodded her head without leaving a trace. Then, under the watchful eyes of everyone, the Luo family, led by old Madame Luo, slowly walked away. And the servants of the Gong Wangfu, without Master's permission, naturally didn't dare to stop them. The old madam of each family, the mistresses of the family, and even the noblewomen, all looked at each other in dismay. If it was said that Jingwan left, then it could be said that she was young and impetuous, and couldn't bear being wronged, so she had a small temper. However, old Madame Luo didn't even say a word. Her granddaughter said to leave, and she just led the way. Wasn't the right thing to do to teach her own child mediate, and everyone would have a way out. Then, everyone would still be amiable. Even if Luo Peishan was an important official in the court, it was very unwise for the Luo family to offend a Wangye who held real power. Old Madame Luo wasn't such a short-sighted person. There were rumors that she loved the Luo third young lady very much. Looking at her attitude, it really wasn't fake at all. She couldn't tolerate the slightest grievance, to the point where she had no principles and didn't care about the Luo family. Everyone was smart. Seeing the attitude of the Gong Wangfei, and the appearance of the Qin Wangfu's personal attendant, they immediately sent people to inquire about it. Then they quickly got the news. After all, with such a big commotion, it was impossible to hide it even if they wanted to. With the King of Hell taking action, everyone shut their mouths. This lord no one could afford to offend. Master Liao Chen said that Jin Wangfu and the Luo third young lady are a match made in heaven. The imperial concubine Nyongyong in the palace has already said that Jin Wangfu didn't bring bad luck to his wife. It's just that the marriage hasn't come yet. His Majesty also attaches great importance to it. Jin Wangfu's protection of the Luo third young lady, whether it's because there won't be another one if he misses this one, or because he really lost face. In short, the Luo third young lady who is connected to Jin Wangfu's fate cannot be provoked. A noblewoman said lightly. When the people around heard this, they nodded in deep agreement. The third miss of the Luo family looked gentle and kind, but if someone really provoked her, she would be a tough nut to crack. With her protective grandparents, great elder princess's support, and the King of Hell, whoever provoked her would be unlucky. It was fine if it was her own fault, but if her family was implicated, she would be a great sinner. Didn't they see the wife of the left governor crying to see her son just now? He was kicked to the point of vomiting blood. If something went wrong, it might leave a lifelong illness. When Jin Wangfu left, he seemed to have said that the left governor should go to him and ask for forgiveness. TSK, who knew what would happen. Looking at the Gongqin Wangfei again. Her birthday was like this. However, there were still a few people who pitied her, and more people were rejoicing in her misfortune. The main reason was that she was usually too flamboyant. Other people's husbands took in concubines, but she showed off how much her own Wang Ye's husband cared about her. Other people's concubines stirred up trouble, but she lamented that the Gong Qin Wangfu was too quiet. When everyone was the same, their hearts would be balanced. When other people's feet hurt, you still ruthlessly stepped on them. How could you not be hated? Therefore today you were ruthlessly taught a lesson and lost a lot of face. You deserved it. That was why it was said that people should be low-key. Even if they were living a good life, they should just be happy. Not everyone could be like Jin Wangfu, who casually drew hatred and didn't worry about being retaliated against. However, it might not be the right time to retaliate against Jin Wangfu. Therefore, thinking about it this way, perhaps Jin Wangfu was just enjoying himself in time. On the way out, because there was no master's order, the servants also didn't prepare a soft sedan. The group of people left on foot. Jingwan and the others also heard Li Hongyuan's actions. Even Sun Yijia, who had an extremely bad impression of Li Hongyuan, was silent. No matter what his purpose was, it was very satisfying. From now on, whoever dared to find trouble with Wan Mimi would have to think twice. On the contrary, Jingwan appeared to be very silent. Jin Wangfu's actions had repeatedly exceeded her expectations. Instead, it was old Madame Luo who patted Jingwan's hand. "Silly girl, don't think so much. The so-called, one's glory is bound together. One's loss is also bound together. You and Jin Wangfu are engaged. Gong Qin Wangfei humiliating you is no different from humiliating him." This was Jin Wangfu's own words, and it was basically what everyone agreed on. At this time, when old Madame Luo emphasized it again, Jingwan instead felt that there was a deeper meaning. Don't think too much, but this person, had a bit of a rebellious heart, and would subconsciously think too much. If Jin Wangfu wasn't because of this reason, then it could only be because of her? Alright, she really shouldn't think too much. Thus, Jingwan didn't hesitate to throw this question to the side. Old Madame Luo was actually very satisfied with Li Hongyuan's actions. When she found out that Jin Wangfu really didn't have a terrible reputation and no power on the surface, she immediately nodded and agreed. The most important thing was that he could protect Wan. In fact, he did this impeccably. If it was other people, such as Chan Jingmin and Sun Yilin, when they encountered today's matter, they could only remain silent. No matter how angry they were, they could only watch as Wan was bullied. At most, they would swear in their hearts that they would do this and that in the future. But most people would only look at the present. Even if they retaliated in the future, the current grievances were real. She even hoped that Wan wouldn't be wronged in the slightest. When they left the Gong Wangfu, everyone boarded the carriage. Then, not long after, they were intercepted halfway. Daring to do this kind of thing so openly, other than a certain person, no one else could think of it. Fortunately, the only people who came with old Madame Luo were Jingwan and Sun Yijia. As for the others, even Wang Shi didn't come. When Li Hongyuan found Luo Peishan and said those words, Luo Peishan basically repeated them word for word to his old wife. To let Wan be alone with him, to want her granddaughter to be pure and innocent, and not be taken advantage of, that was absolutely impossible. But could you stop him? If you really were stopped, you probably wouldn't be a living king of hell. So, this grandson-in-law, if you were satisfied with something, you would be very satisfied. If you were dissatisfied with something, you would want to chop him up. Old Madame Luo finally sighed and could only nod in agreement. She only hoped that Jin Wangfu wouldn't be too excessive. Li Hongyuan only had Gong Mama stay behind to serve, and everyone else was sent away. Sun Yijia watched as Jingwan boarded Jin Wangfu's carriage. It didn't have the symbol of the Wangfu, and it wasn't eye-catching. Thinking of his bad reputation, she was worried that Jingwan would suffer. Even if the two were engaged, as long as they weren't married, they would still be a single man and woman together. People knew it would also be bad. If he cared even a little bit, he shouldn't have done this kind of thing. Sure enough, it's easy to change mountains and rivers, but hard to change one's nature. She endured and endured, but in the end, Sun Ijia also jumped off the carriage. Ijia, come to grandmother's carriage. Before she could take 2 steps, Sun Ijia was stopped by old Madame Luo. Looking at old Madame Luo, who was lifting the curtain, and then at Jin Wangfu's carriage, she hesitated, but still gave up and didn't chase. Old Madame loved Wan Mimi dearly, and was so calm and collected. There shouldn't be any problems, right? She turned and boarded old Madame Luo's carriage. Grandmother! Old Madame Luo pulled her to sit beside her, and the carriage slowly moved forward. A moment later, old Madame Luo opened her mouth. Jin Wangfu treats Wan differently, you don't have to worry. Sun Ijia stared blankly, she didn't understand what this meant, but seeing that old Madame Luo didn't have any intention to talk more, she could only suppress her doubts. Understand, grandmother. You're also a good child. In terms of status, marrying Jinghua is a grievance for you. It's nothing, grandmother. I don't feel wronged, really, I don't feel wronged at all. Sun Ijia paused. To tell you the truth, in the Luo family, I feel much happier than in Dinghua Fu. Being able to marry Jinghua is my life's greatest fortune, a fortune cultivated from 8 lifetimes. It's also Jinghua's fortune to be able to marry you. Don't think too much about your maternal family's matters. Just live a good life with Jinghua. As for grandmother, I don't ask Wan to have great glory, splendor, wealth and rank. I only wish for her to be well. I also have the same expectations for you too. It's just that the heavens seem to want to shower her with riches and honor. But it's hard to predict whether it will be smooth sailing. She hopes that you too will be well, so you must be well. Sun Ijia's eyes reddened. How could she not know what old Madame Luo meant? One person for a lifetime, she also knew and even supported it. Grandmother. All right, stop crying, let's not talk about this. If you don't mind that grandmother is an old woman, you can chat with grandmother. You can talk about anything. Perhaps it was because of Jingwan, but she was more patient with people who were close to Jingwan. And on the other side, Jingwan sat at the side of the carriage with her head slightly lowered, while Li Hongyuan half leaned on the middle seat. Ever since Jingwan got on the carriage, his line of sight never left her. If Jingwan knew that he had previously smashed the wine jug and splashed his clothes and shoes, she would know at this moment that he had completely changed into a new set of clothes. This carriage didn't look conspicuous from the outside, but it was actually very big. The decorations inside were also very luxurious. Compared to the carriage that Jingwan had stayed in for a short period of time, this carriage was even better. Every little detail revealed that Jin Qin Wang was rich and super rich, but it wasn't the least bit uncouth. It was extremely tasteful and matched his status. Moreover, Jin Qin Wang was clearly a hedonist. Luxury, tastefulness, and comfort. When these 3 things were put together, it was even more difficult to satisfy. But for this person it seemed like it was just a piece of cake. Come here. Li Hongyuan's slightly low voice sounded. It was relatively soft, almost enough for Jingwan to hear without scaring her because of the sudden sound. Jingwan raised her head. Li Hongyuan pointed at the seat in front of her. The meaning was self-evident. Jingwan hesitated for a moment, but still got up and sat over there. First, she couldn't refuse. Even if she was tough, she still had to choose a partner. Obviously, it was useless for Li Hongyuan. Also, Jingwan wasn't a native of the ancient times. The concept of keeping a distance between men and women wasn't that heavy. The other party was her own fiancé, and there was no one around, so it didn't matter if he got closer. Although, subconsciously, she rejected romantic stallion men, but she didn't have any expectations for the other party, let alone hope for love. Sooner or later she would reach this step, so she wouldn't be very resistant. Li Hongyuan very naturally put his hand on Jingwan's waist. With a little force, he pulled her in to prevent her from losing her balance. At the same time, he also brought her closer to his body. Jingwan subconsciously reached out to block his chest. However, even if she was much stronger than the average girl, she was still far from Li Hongyuan. His other hand held Jingwan's white and slender fingers, and gently rubbed them. Jingwon only held hands with her boyfriend in her previous life, but compared to this, the difference was like heaven and earth. Moreover, this handsome man was looking at her tenderly and affectionately, as if she was his whole world. The touch of his fingertips caused an electric current to surge through her body, making her feel numb, and her body couldn't help but tremble. "Your Highness." Lee Hongyuan responded softly. His voice was low and seductive. He pulled her hand to his lips and kissed her fingertips. Once, twice, 3 times. He took turns kissing her, not letting go of any of her fingers. Jingwon only felt that Lee Hongyuan's lips were slightly cold. Like she said, he was the kind of handsome man who had no flaws. The shape of his lips was naturally exceptionally beautiful. Even Jingwon had the urge to go up and have a taste. Although it wasn't that she hadn't kissed him before, but at that time, she was forced to kiss him while she was unconscious. She was scared to death, so who would have the mood to experience what it was like? Thinking of this, Jingwon unconsciously swallowed her saliva. When Jingwon realized what she had done, her face flushed red. She lowered her head and wished that she could be an ostrich for once. Jingwon would never admit that she was a pervert. It was all this bastard's fault. Jingwon's series of reactions naturally fell into Lee Hongyuan's eyes. He curled his lips and laughed softly. Lee Hongyuan let go of her hand and pinched her chin. He used a bit of force to force her to raise her head. Then, his hand moved along her neck and clasped the back of her neck. At the same time, he used his hand on her waist to press their bodies together. Lee Hongyuan lowered his head slightly. Their lips were extremely close to each other. "Let you have a taste," Lee Hongyuan coaxed. His breath caressed her face. In this aspect, a certain king of hell was definitely at the elite level. Jingwon was probably even worse than a rookie. The difference between their levels was too great. She couldn't control herself and was about to die. A demon had appeared. Who would be kind enough to take him away? Seeing that they were getting closer and closer and were about to touch each other, Jingwon's head suddenly tilted back and her body began to struggle. However, her struggle was futile, and Lee Hongyuan's eyes were getting darker and darker. "Won, don't move. I'm going to get angry." It was more threatening than threatening. Jingwon was a little frightened by his eyes. He was temperamental. That's right. Lee Hongyuan didn't insist on kissing her and leaned back. However, his hands weren't content. The touch on her waist and neck was gentle but couldn't be ignored. Jingwon felt goosebumps all over her body. Her waist and legs were weak. Jingwon really couldn't take it anymore. "Your Highness." It was still that bewitching tone. "Can you let go of this subject's body?" Jingwon said with a slightly trembling voice. "Okay." Jingwon wasn't happy. Not only because his hands didn't stop moving, but also because the more agreeable he was, the more likely it was a turning point. But, as expected, Lee Hongyuan's tongue swept across her lips. "Kiss me and I'll let you go." Jingwon was originally trembling because of his seductive actions. However, after hearing his words, her face couldn't help but darken. "You're a dignified prince. Do you have to be so shameless? Bad girl, you clearly wanted to kiss me just now. Now it seems like you're forcing yourself. I've already told you that I won't force people." Jingwon wanted to swear. Isn't this forcing others? Seeing Jingwon's glare and sullen appearance, Lee Hongyuan was in a good mood. "You really don't want to kiss me. But I want to kiss Won. I was thinking that if you took the initiative I would just kiss you. If it was me." Jingwon suddenly leaned forward and pecked him on the lips before moving away. "Your Highness, please let go." Jingwon's movements were too fast and too sudden. Lee Hongyuan didn't have time to do anything even if he wanted to. He couldn't help but laugh. "What a silly girl. Have you tasted it yet? This kind of thing should be experienced properly." Then he told her how to experience it with his own hands. First, it was just a kiss on the lips. Not long after, a certain someone was no longer satisfied with such contact. With a domineering force that couldn't be refused. He opened her teeth. It wasn't that he didn't kiss her deeply. It was just that when she was awake, that kind of refusal seemed even more wonderful. His lips swept across her pearly white teeth, swept across her palate, and entangled with her tongue to dance with him. He didn't know when, but Jingwan's action of pushing him out completely turned into an act of obedience. Not only her hands, but also her tongue. When a certain hand crept up to her chest, Jingwan's muddled consciousness seemed to finally realize that something was wrong. She suddenly woke up and retreated. She pressed Li Hongyuan's hand down and glared at him angrily. Li Hongyuan licked his lips as if he hadn't had enough. He looked at Jingwan and curled the corners of his mouth. There was an inexplicable sense of wickedness and mockery in his voice. Wan, do you think that I don't have enough strength? So you want to press harder? Jingwan was a little confused at first. Only when the hand squeezed her chest did she react. Bastard! At the same time, she slapped his hand hard. From the sound of her voice, it was clear that she didn't show any mercy. This time, it was Li Hongyuan's turn to be startled. In his previous life, he seemed to have only been beaten by his father. This kind of method, this kind of person was really fresh. Li Hongyuan looked at the back of his hand that was a little red. Should this prince be glad that Wan didn't slap my face, Jingwan pursed her lips. She was also angry out of humiliation, so she subconsciously slapped him. One must know that there were only a few people who dared to hit this prince. And the ones who really did it were probably Emperor Lu Cheng and noble consort Su. If an ordinary person dared to hit him, it would definitely be a serious crime. However, he had already hit her. Li Hongyuan pinched her chin. After hitting this prince, shouldn't you immediately ask for forgiveness? 'Cause if it's you, you're the one who's wronged first. This subject's daughter is rude. Your Highness, please forgive her. Li Hongyuan was a little surprised. I thought that you would resist to the death and not admit defeat. Last time in the palace, when I wanted to flog you, you didn't even frown. How can it be the same? It's not my fault. So Wan now feels that she was wrong. It's not enough to admit that she was wrong. She still has to change. This person had already been slapped. How could she change? Moreover, she didn't think that this matter was her fault. But forget it. She couldn't get through to these people who were under the imperial power. There was no need to resist to the death. She looked at Li Hongyuan with vigilance. What does your Highness want? Li Hongyuan first tapped his lips. Wan, you can either compensate me or let me hit you back. Jingwan looked at him, then closed her eyes. Your Highness, you can hit me back. Seeing that Jingwan seemed to be facing death with equanimity, Li Hongyuan's hand on her waist slid down to her buttocks. Then he leaned close to her ear. If you want to hit me, you should hit me here. Moreover, you should take off my pants and hit me. Jingwan immediately opened her eyes and grabbed his collar. How could he be so shameless? Even if he had a bad record, she didn't have a bad impression of him from the few times she had met him. She thought that he was actually very cultured and didn't lack gentlemanly manners. Why was there such a big difference? You were just a subject before. Now you're my fiancé. Course it's different. It turned out that Jingwan had voiced out her thoughts in a fit of rage. Your Highness also knows that I'm your fiancé. How many people haven't seen each other before getting married? As for herself, she had already been taken advantage of. Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows. Wan wants to consummate her marriage with her husband the first time she meets him. I thought that you would prefer this. There's a process of getting familiar with each other. When the time comes, it'll be natural. Of course, it was better to get familiar with each other first. However, that was to improve their understanding of each other's temperament, not their bodies. Li Hongyuan pinched her face. You're the one who needs to apologize to this prince. It's your choice to choose one out of the two. Alright, I'll give you a chance to choose again. There's no third choice. Li Hongyuan shook his head. She had already taken off her pants and buttocks. The level of embarrassment was off the charts. In any case, they had already kissed, so one more kiss wouldn't matter, right? This time she closed her eyes and blushed. Wan Wan is such a smart girl. How could you make mistakes again and again today? You're the one who should apologize to this prince. He had already kissed her, yet he still wanted her to take the initiative. How shameless. Faint. Jingwan grabbed his clothes again. She pulled hard and bit down. It was a real bite. Li Hongyuan didn't just feel the sting on his lips. He also tasted blood. This small injury was naturally harmless. On the contrary, Li Hongyuan felt that it was quite exciting and enjoyable. This little wolf cub like Wan Wan reminded him of her ruthlessness when she killed people in his previous life. It made him want to strip her clean right now and eat her whole. However, Li Hongyuan restrained himself and didn't move. Other than cooperating with her a little, he completely let her do as she pleased. Jingwan felt that he wanted her to take the initiative to apologize to him. His lips moved away slightly. Continue. This apology has to be sincere. At the very least, it has to satisfy this prince. For this kind of thing, whether he was satisfied or not was up to him. Who knew if he was satisfied or not? Jingwan wanted to bite this shameless person to death. Wan Wan still wants to bite this prince. Come at me, this prince doesn't mind. Jingwan directly let go and pretended to be dead. She didn't want to pay attention to him anymore. Moreover, now that she thought about it, he was able to bite anyone he hugged without any hesitation. His flirting and seducing techniques were also very experienced. It was clear that he was a super stud horse who was used to doing this kind of thing. Jingwan also despised herself for falling for it so easily. She was so easily dazed by his kiss. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653110. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com. Bikugo mobile reading website. Bicken. Chapter 156. Li Hongyuan could clearly feel the change in Jingwan's mood. To be honest, he felt that it was a little strange. He didn't have many women in his previous life, but they weren't few either. They weren't much different from those maidservants who served him. Naturally, he couldn't expect to understand the temperament and preferences of those women. At that time, those women were his vassals, so naturally, they should follow his every whim. Later on, he met Wan Wan and interacted with her for a period of time under special circumstances. He had some understanding of her, but that was after experiencing setbacks and tribulations. Perhaps her nature hadn't changed, but her temperament had definitely changed. She was definitely different from the Wan Wan who still had the worries of a young girl. Although he started to understand her daily life a few years ago, that kind of understanding was only on the surface and couldn't touch her heart. If he wanted to understand her completely, he still had a long way to go. Li Hongyuan sighed in his heart. He was looking for trouble. However, there was no other way. Who asked him to want such a precious treasure? Not only her body but more importantly her heart. If he didn't want her to be like other women, he could only try to understand her. Then, no matter how big the punishment was, he still had to endure it. Li Hongyuan leaned back and stepped on the couch with one foot. He lifted Jingwan up to sit on his other leg and let her lie on his body. Her head was pressed against the side of his neck. He used his chin to gently rub her forehead and stroked her back with pure comfort. Then, he quietly hugged her and didn't do anything else. Jingwan was a little confused by him. Just a moment ago, he was full of lust and flirting with her in various ways. How did he become a warm man in the blink of an eye? This was completely wrong. Jingwan wanted to see what kind of expression he had at this moment. What, Wan Wan still wants to apologize to this prince? Li Hongyuan didn't stop her and just chuckled before she got up. Jingwan paused for a moment and obediently lay back down on the bed. This time, Li Hongyuan's voice lasted a little longer. His chest vibrated along with the sound of his heartbeat. Jingwan subconsciously clenched her fist and punched him. Then she realized that she had made a mistake again. This slightly coquettish punch was like an itch to Li Hongyuan, and it was especially aimed at his heart. Although he was a little restless, he restrained himself and reached out to hold her hand. "You have a bad temper." Jingwan didn't say anything and didn't pull her hand back. After the initial confusion, after she threw a little tantrum, her heart was now very shocked. Because of Li Hongyuan's attitude, he was taking her emotions into consideration and even indulging her. No matter how she thought about it, it wasn't right. Then Jingwan unexpectedly thought of another characteristic of Li Hongyuan: 7 days of intense affection. She didn't know much about this point. She only knew a little from Sun Yijia's extremely dissatisfied nagging towards Jin Qinhuang. He would give extreme affection to the beauties he fancied. As for the specifics, Sun Yijia didn't know. Then, did Jingwan have reason to suspect that everything he did to her today, whether it was the previous teasing or the current care, were all part of his intense affection? If every time this happened, he could restrain all of his bad temper and really hold a woman in the palm of his hand, with a perfect skin and a tenderness that could drown people, it wouldn't be a difficult thing to fall for him. No wonder she heard that every few days, many women would be infatuated with him and go crazy for him. However, once those few days passed, the gentle lover could transform into the cold king of hell. Don't expect to get even the slightest bit of pity from him. Jingwan wasn't sure if she had stepped into this kind of situation. She didn't know if after 7 days, she would be ruthlessly abandoned by him. Of course, her identity was different, and it was impossible for her to stay by his side for 7 days. However, it seemed that the so-called 7 days of intense affection, 7 days was only the longest time limit. No one exceeded 7 days, and the number of people who reached 7 days could be counted on one's fingers. It seemed that after 1 day, he would completely lose interest. Jingwan thought that she had found the crux of the problem and relaxed instead. She even thought optimistically that since she was able to be doted on by Jin Qinhuang, it meant that her appearance should be a little more beautiful than she thought. Or perhaps it was just her identity that gave her extra points. Perhaps after today, he would no longer pay attention to her. In any case, from the beginning, she only wanted a status. Because of Master Liao Chen's approval, as long as there were no uncontrollable accidents, she didn't need to think about breaking off the engagement. Thinking about Jin Qinhuang's former fiancés, this kind of uncontrollable accident was something that Jingwan would absolutely not allow. Seeing that she was his wife at most, he should throw her in the inner courtyard of the Wangfu, and not another courtyard where he kept beauties. After all, that would also damage his face, right? Jingwan refused to think about more details at this time. Since Jin Qinhuang was so interested in playing, then she would enjoy it. She wanted to see to what extent his so-called intense affection could pamper her. Li Hongyuan clearly felt that Jingwan's body had softened, unlike before when she was more or less tense. He didn't think that his pacification was the main reason for this. As for what it was, he couldn't think of it for a while. However, no matter what the reason was, for Jingwan to be able to lean on him like this, it was a scene that he had longed for too long. It was a rare enjoyment. If Li Hongyuan knew of Jingwan's thoughts, who knows what kind of expression he would have. However, Li Hongyuan was actually a person who wouldn't repent even in death. He would walk a path until it was dark. Even if he hit the southern wall, he would probably dig a hole and continue to walk. Perhaps in the future, when Jingwan led him around a corner, he would probably obediently follow. Therefore, Li Hongyuan felt that he and Jingwan would still have to grind after that. It was really the truth. Now, the two people's brain circuits were on completely different frequencies. The carriage fell into silence, and the expressionless faces of the people outside finally eased a little. However, when they thought that someone had endured for so long and finally had a chance to take advantage of her openly, they were afraid that this kind of thing would not be rare. Therefore, they could only feel depressed. Of course, the only one who was really depressed was Nanny Gong. The others were at most a little embarrassed after hearing the scene. In fact, since the King of Hell learned about this marriage from his father, he had been in a good mood recently. When he was in a good mood, it meant that the days of suffering of the people around him were reduced. According to their thoughts, it would be good if Luo Luo could marry into the king's mansion immediately. When the carriage stopped, Jingwan got up with Li Hongyuan and also sat up. The place where she didn't sit was unchanged. He reached out and rearranged the slightly messy hair ornaments on Jingwan's head. However, because he was not familiar with it, he accidentally hooked Jingwan's hair. Before Jingwan did anything, he felt distressed. He simply took off all the hair ornaments on her head that were just for decoration rather than fixing her hair. "I'll redo it later. Are you hungry? Let's go eat something." In fact, it was still early to eat. However, compared to the two of them staying in this enclosed space, it was better to go out. Therefore she nodded. According to Li Hongyuan's idea, he wanted to directly carry Jingwan off the carriage, but Jingwan firmly refused. Li Hongyuan did not argue with her and got off the carriage before Jingwan. Then, when Jingwan came out, he naturally reached out to help her down. Jingwan paused for a moment before reaching out and placing her hand in his palm. Jingwan felt that it was somewhat inconceivable that the rumored temperamental, cold and ruthless Jin Qinwang could lower himself to this extent when he was favoring her. Those women who were born and raised here and whose status was far inferior to hers, she was afraid that they would be overwhelmed by this favor and would be one step closer to falling into his hands. It was no wonder that Jingwan's thoughts couldn't be turned around. It was just that no matter how she looked at it, it didn't seem like it was the first time that he had done this kind of thing. According to common sense, for a person like him after getting off the carriage, it would be good if he could just stand there and wait for you. Don't mention Jingwan. Even the people who served by Li Hongyuan's side were all unusually shocked. Because of the assassination at Bailong Temple, Li Hongyuan's bodyguards who belonged to the other factions had all been removed. It looked like there might be people from other factions, but in fact, they were all loyal to Li Hongyuan. Even if they were not as close as the group of people who were closest to Li Hongyuan, they more or less knew about his matters. They knew that there was a person at the top of their master's heart. After the marriage was confirmed, they also knew that that person was the current future Wang Fei. However, when they saw this scene with their own eyes, they were even more clear about the position of the future Wang Fei in their master's heart. After the Wang Fei married into the master's family, how should they treat her? They obediently lowered their heads and looked down, daring to stare at the future Wang Fei. Did they want their eyeballs to be dug out? After standing still, Jingwan looked around. Unexpectedly, she had already entered an elegant courtyard. There were winding streams, small bridges, pavilions, flowers, and rockery. To some extent, it was very in line with Jingwan's preferences. When Nanny Gong's serious gaze landed on her head, Jingwan suddenly felt awkward. There was also an inexplicable shyness. She slightly lowered her head and felt a little helpless, as if she had been caught doing something bad by the head of the household. Li Hongyuan glanced at Nanny Gong, took Jingwan's hand, and stepped directly on the small bridge in front of them. Nanny Gong didn't feel anything about the living king of hell's eyes that couldn't wait to kill her completely. She just lamented for Jingwan in her heart. As soon as the status was confirmed, the living king of hell began to devour it blatantly. The girl was afraid that, passing through the garden, they went directly into the attic on the opposite side. This attic was different from other places. First of all, it was quite spacious. There were only a few main pillars supporting it and a guardrail at the edge. The other places were empty, and there were curtains hanging above. After the two entered hand in hand, a few maids quietly put down the curtains. And the furnishings inside were all luxurious, elegant and stylish. However, Jingwan's eyes unexpectedly fell on the big bed with a cone-shaped sandman hanging on it. She looked back at the man beside her. Even if it was bottomless, Jingwan seemed to feel a cluster of flames. Digression. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653112. HTML. Please click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com. Mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. You're tuning in to the Whispers of Romance YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.